Welcome to the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Trish.
And this is our podcast. We talk about wrestling news and various topics from different promotions, primarily AEW, but also New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, and topics from around the wrestling world. Whatever we find interesting, and we hope you will too. We're a proud member of the Social Suplex Podcast Network, and you can find our content on our podcast feed, the Social Suplex Podcast feed, as well as on Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and rate our podcast. We also encourage you to check out the Social Suplex newsletter, which is published every month and available at socialsuplex.com. I think you guys are experimenting with a slightly different format this month where you have some stuff going out this week and some things coming later, which I'm excited about.
Got to keep trying these new things.
You have to keep trying new things.
Difference.
Yes.
And, yeah. So we'll see how we go. But yeah, if you are looking around for something good to read this week, head over to socialsuplex.com and catch our latest edition of the newsletter with front page going out on Wednesday.
Beautiful, which will be the day after this podcast drops. But today it is Sunday, July 19th, 2026. Trish and I are recording a little bit earlier than normal because we don't want to miss the World Cup final, which is Spain versus FIFA. So we think that'll be a good match.
Trish, look, this is like, we never do this stuff, right? But who cares?
Yeah, we're fucking chit-chatting. Let's chit-chat briefly.
I saw a post on like Instagram yesterday, and it's like 3 things I learned about this World Cup, and it was like Jude Bellingham is hot. Yep, okay. Yep. Erling Haaland is funny. Yeah, okay. Yep. And I hate Messi. And I was like, yeah, this is where we are now.
My friends came over yesterday, and one of them has only been observing this through Blue Sky, and she's like, it feels like there's some racist stuff going on. And I was like, no. I was like, everyone hates Argentina. And she's like, oh. And I was like, yeah. I'm like, not. It's just everyone hates Argentina. She's like, that explains it. I'm like, everyone thinks they cheat. It's a whole thing. They think FIFA's on there. Oh, she was like, okay. I was like, yeah. I can't explain a lot of what's happening, but I can explain that.
There was more fucking wrestling in that show than there is half of WWE's television shows.
That's a burn to both, and I'm here for it.
Fucking throwing them everywhere, and it was like, are they gonna get a card? No. It was like, oh my god. I nearly rang my dad. Actually, my dad's Scottish, but he also he was serving during the Falklands. I nearly rang him and said, which team do you hate the most?
I gotta say the England versus France game yesterday was outstanding.
It was awesome, wasn't it? Like,
it was. I couldn't watch it. I could only start watching it after the halftime, and I was like, holy fuck, they're up 4. Okay, this will be dead for the rest of the game. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, it won't be. It was fucking crazy. The announcers were also incredible because the one guy was like, I'll be furious if they don't add 20 minutes to the rest of this game. He's like, I just want this game to go on forever.
Essentially, it's a friendly at that point. Leave it be.
It was so cute. I was like, okay, I'm here for this. We're just going to miss the World Cup.
I know, it adds to my no Harry Kane agenda, though.
No, I love that's true.
Osaka. No, I am. I think something like that is so much fun, isn't it? And all the interaction that you have with it and stuff. And again, it's the things we talk about wrestling all the time. It's like, it brings, when people kind of get brung together, it's that communal feeling that you kind of remember, especially when you go to live things. And I think that was definitely one of that. I will be in mourning for this week. So, God, we got to go back to wrestling. Anyway, wrestling, that's what we do now.
Yeah, that's what we do. Unfortunately, this is no longer a World Cup podcast. It's a wrestling podcast. I don't know what the weather's like for you, Trish, but it's an absolutely fucking gorgeous day today. So if it's 12-ish at noon, it's absolutely gorgeous weather here just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I hope wherever you are, whatever time this is, it's as nice outside as it is here. So, and that stands for the listeners too.
It's been warm here for 2 weeks. We're dying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can't handle this.
You can't. You can't. You just ooze moisture from every pore.
Indeed. It is what it is. But anyway, right. So let's start on some wrestling.
With some wrestling. We're going to start with New Japan Pro Wrestling today, folks, because we had the G1 kickoff last weekend in San Jose. It was San Jose?
No, Chicago. Well, on outskirts of Chicago.
Wow, why did I think it was fucking San Jose? It was at the Now Arena, wasn't it?
Forbidden Door was. So that's why you're thinking in your head.
Folks, don't listen to me. Lady should have been some kind of expert on wrestling. I didn't even fucking know where this was. This is a fucking Now Arena. Jesus Christ. Where I've been to that Hoffman Estates with that Target, which is, oh Christ almighty. Anyway, the G1 happened. Did I watch it? No. Did I get it downloaded for me and sent to me? Oh, I'm getting a look. It absolutely got sent to me, and I absolutely started watching it, and it just kept crashing my computer because I couldn't fast forward or push through anything I was trying to get to. So, and unfortunately, I did not have 3 hours and 50 minutes this week. This was a rough week for me time-wise.
I will be talking about.
Trish is here to talk about the G1. Everybody seemed to be super into this. They loved the kickoff. There were some issues, I think, with the production side.
Yeah, it's a standard.
Yeah. But Trish, talk to me about some big takeaways from this show. And we'll get into the show to Uno stuff, I guess, afterwards. But, you thought it was a good show. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, so we're now 3 shows in with the G1 now into this weekend. And, I think the things about the kickoff show in Chicago is that it's really part of their re-establishment of the brand in the US. So for far too long now, it's been reliant on this strong branding that has basically been a combination of New Japan current roster and former roster mates that used to wrestle for them that are now in like AEW or elsewhere, and then independent talent that are only really used within the US and not used so much in Japan by the company. And that has been really kind of negative results. So they've had 2 kind of really big shows in recent years. So that would be the Tetsuya Naito John Moxley match at Windy City Riot, which also was one that kind of captured scalper attention for I've never really understood the reason. And last year's same venue show in Chicago with the last US match of Hiroshi Tanahashi against Konosuke Takeshita. And the thing about these shows were that the current roster felt like afterthoughts. There was periods of time, I know, like producer Leah watched a show with me last year, Resurgence, where the IWGP title was second to the top, and the crowd did not care. It was Zack Sabre Jr. and Hiroki Goto, which is, rematch of probably one of the best matches in New Japan last year, back from New Beginning when Goto won the belt. And no one could care less. It had like no atmosphere whatsoever. It felt cold. It would just felt like it was a match from somewhere else that just wasn't respected. Like they'd never seen anything, and they were just busy because they wanted to see the Bullet Club people at the end because that was what they paid for. So that couldn't go on. It could not go on. If it carried on like that, you might as well not bother. And it's funny, isn't it? Because there's been so much talk about, you need to have these wrestlers on Forbidden Door to sell tickets. But the last few years, they've had wrestlers on Forbidden Door, and their US attendances outside of the 2 Chicago shows have dropped significantly. They've been struggling to get at points 1,000 people in an arena. So there had to be like a sea change. And you could see that it was coming last year when they basically just stopped doing US shows post Windy City Riot. And it was like, okay, we need to reassess what we are. We need to reassess how do we elevate this product within the US, being that we know that we aren't the anti-WWE sentiment show anymore because of the presence of AEW. And I think a key thing with that was we need to make the people on our current roster the actual stars of this company again. And a lot of these are very young. A lot of them are very green. We're seeing people experiment with their kind of their look. A lot of people got new themes, including Tsuji, who's gone down quite funnily. It's a very Eurovision beat, but that's thing. So you've still got people who are kind of in their development phase. You don't really have that many kind of finished products at the moment, so that can be a challenge. But that was kind of one of the very much keys to this. So early in the year, they ran the New Beginning USA show in Trenton, New Jersey. And that was very much using the same ethos. And then when it comes to the G1 this year, it was an opportunity to showcase pretty much your entire heavyweight roster, minus, Gabe Kidd and Drilla Maloney, who, because Gabe was out with visa issues, and Taichi, who did not get in as per normal. Responded, as Super J Cast reported first, by throwing a chair across the room. Poor guy. Maybe he doesn't like flying. That's the excuse for use. But you've got all of those kind of younger talent within that pool in this show. And the way that they did it is we're just going to run these 9 matches. It would have been 10, obviously, with a Gabe and Drillerman. But we're going to run these 9 matches straight through. and it's going to be all of our young talent. We're going to open with Aaron Rolfe, and we're going to close with Yota Tsuji in the same slot that we used Okada in against Tanahashi in 2019, the last time they ran the G1 in the US. So it's very much about establishing that. And I think I read an interview with like Hiroshi Tanahashi, and he talked about it as in like for holding the first night in the United States. He said, I think it's a crucial event that can set the stage for the next 3, 4, or 5 years. It's important for American fans to get a close look at today's New Japan wrestlers and the current New Japan style. So this is an opportunity for that. And it's a thing where you're not putting too much pressure on them to deliver like this crazy number. It did like 4,133, which is about 700 down on what they did in Dallas with, that roster that everyone lauded in 2019. So it's not a horrendous number by any means. They probably could have even done better, to be honest, because they left their lowest price tickets in the last 2 weeks at $65, which is insane. And that was the same week where you had All Out on sale for, the same venue for AEW, and you also had WWE at the Allstate Arena on the Monday night. So it's like you probably could have done more if you'd thought about that a little bit better. But New Japan tickets wise, they live in a very rigid structure. It's kind of different. And that's the same reason why when you watch it on TV, you see like the whole lower bowl open and kind of the big gaps. And that's because that's just the way they sell tickets. Like in Japan, it's the way they sell tickets when they've been in the US. It's very different to the US TV where it's like we sell one side and, we don't sell anything else until that's full because we want to look at it. They just do it their own way. But yeah, it is very much, we're going to bookend it with the two people that we are most focused on this year in Aaron Wolfe and Yota Tsuji, even though Aaron Wolfe is, not as he's a huge domestic star in the mainstream, and maybe not so well known, and definitely not so well known outside. And then we're going to make sure that we present every single person that we want to kind of get over with these crowds as stars. So, we're going to give Yuta Ice and Oscar, Knockout Brothers making kind of noise outside of Japan as well. We're going to give them big wins on this show, or first night wins, on their first G1. And, that coming off for somewhere that would have been in Forbidden Door if it had not been for visas, So that was big on them. And then, we're going to make sure that we have the big match for Shota Umino with Zack Sabre Jr. We're going to ensure that Cal Newman, coming off his IWGP World title reign, is going to get a win. And we're going to make sure that we finish with our champion as the guy. And that's what really came across to me. I think there's this thing with a thing like that, because it's 9 matches, you get a lot of sameness in some ways, but you contradict that with the fact that you have something like Rei Oiwa and Oleg Bolton having just like a crazy kind of striking fest at the first part of their match into a submission match, because Oiwa realizes he needs to have something else to fight off Bolton's power because he's getting overpowered. Just kind of break everything up. But because of the way the matches are, they don't outstay their welcome. You don't have this 25-30 minute match early on in the card. So it builds up, and you get to the main event. And the main event, Takeshita and Tsuji rematch of Tokyo Dome this year. And they delivered a great main event. Like, they just delivered exactly what you want from a G1 matchup. It fit the location perfectly. I think having Takeshita on that babyface side is much, much easier in terms of match structure than it is to have him on the kind of antagonist heel side that we've seen, over the last year in New Japan. Tsuji has identified how he wants to wrestle now. So while he's still figuring out bits of his kind of presentation and his crowd connection, that sort of thing, he's identified who he wants to be. And he did an interview. It's actually been pulled because of the Kidani thing, which we'll get to in a minute. But back at the end of June, where he kind of laid out who he wants to be as champion. And you watch what he's done in these first 2 matches of his in this tour, whether it be the match against Takeshita or the match against Hiroki Goto, and it's like, it's absolutely spot on to what he's saying. So he sees that he needs to be not the big fan favorite. He doesn't need to be Tetsuya Naito. He doesn't need to be, I don't know, Kota Ibushi perhaps, or any of those kind of guys in recent years that are kind of baying off the fan support. He needs to be the Okada style champion. He needs to be the antagonist. He needs to be the guy that people chase, because to get these younger guys over, being that there aren't the veterans for them to overcome, they need somebody else to overcome. So he is setting himself in that, and he's wrestling in that style. So he doesn't care completely if you know, if you boo him or cheer him because you cheer the other guy because you want to see him overcome it. It's exactly what he wants. He doesn't want the silence. He wants you to care. And that's like the whole thing about all the comments and stuff that people have kind of, obviously they took the aggregation and ran with it. Like, it worked for him. And he said this beforehand. He said, it's great because we're going to have a great atmosphere for this main event. And it was. It was the first match on this show that it felt that people in that crowd really cared about who won the match. And that's exactly what you want. You want that energy because you don't want what you had last year with that Zach Goto match where people don't really care one iota about what happens here and they're just waiting for the next match. You want people to care about the top of your company. And they did that really, really, really well. And, you know, he's on it at the moment. He gets exactly what his role is and he gets exactly what he's doing. And he's willing to speak up for promotion. You know, he's very much key things. And when you listen to Tanahashi, you can see him saying very similar things in much more kind of not professional way, but he's older, right? He's in that corporate position. But they're saying exactly the same things. We have to establish this brand as an international brand again, which is not too far from what TV Asahi are aiming for with their properties in terms of what they've talked about this year as well. And we need to establish this belt as the best belt in the world again, as opposed to being something that's secondary. And that's not like everyone concentrated on the Forbidden Door comments, but that's not just about that. That's like in their own company. This is where that thing about it being second, to the top is a big thing. Like, they stopped treating that as the most important thing, and that's what they're reestablishing. And so far in this tour, like, he feels like the IWGP champion and a champion that can be chased that we haven't had in that company since Okada. It's completely different feeling. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. But there's so many stories about kind of these young guys and following like who's going to be able to do what. I'm very interested to see what Oscar does on this, being able to break out from the shadow of someone, hugely charismatic tech partner in Yuto Ice. He was actually on commentary yesterday. And do you know, like, when you give a child too much sugar?
Yes.
Right? And they just start saying
yes.
And like, you can't stop them. They're just like, you're just like, oh no. And they don't know any better, and you just like, well, just wait till it burns off. And that's exactly what he was like on commentary. It was incredible. But no, like, he's someone that wants to be more athletic than standard big man, and they want him to work more standard big man. So it's about, how does that adjust? What is he able to do when he's not got, hugely charismatic Yuto Ice right in front of him? How is Ice going to do in these big single matches, especially because he's in there with the likes of kind of Shingo and everyone else. And then someone like Oleg Bolton, who's like really showing kind of something different at the start of this one, and finally seems to have kind of got his bearings a little bit more and started to change up his style and be more powerful, like a huge power finish at the end of the match yesterday where he just destroyed, like, that's something else kind of keep an eye on. So it's definitely a tournament that if you are really into development of talent and watching people grow from one end to another, it's going to be a fascinating one because it's now wide open because of the injury to Shota Umino. And
yes.
You really have the opportunity to see these people come together. It's exciting in a different way because it's not the same matchups we've seen every year for the last 3 years. This is what it felt like coming out of COVID. It was like a holding pattern, and now New Japan are being forced out of this holding pattern, and now you get to see who is actually going to step up and take these kind of brass rings, or whatever way you want to call it, and follow kind of Suji's lead in that aspect of him going, actually, I'm going to take this role because we need this role. But the thing about Suji is that he's very open. People say he's copying Naito, but I don't see that as the case because it's not an act. Like, he's very open about his views on things, but also he's very open, like, privately about his views on things. It's not like he's just saying these things in public and thinking it's going to happen, because the thing that started all this year with the Kidani thing and that was the fact that he went out, right before, right at the end of the New Beginning show in Osaka, and he basically pleaded around Bushiroad, we wrestlers aren't just cards in one of your trading games. We're risking our lives in the ring. And it was basically like a cry to look after us. And that came on a night where Hiromu Takahashi was departing the company. So very close to Suji, within that unbound company, LIJ Group. It comes on the back of Tetsuya Naito departing the company last year, also talking about the schedule and how basically you are used until you are destroyed. And then you had on the back of that was Okada departing the company, who obviously had huge problems with management, particularly Kidani at Bushiroad, and had also complained about schedule and other interference and that sort of thing. So it's not like one thing. And and that's why they're always talking about, when they talk about Tony Khan, like between Hiromu's comments, Okada's comments early in the year, back after Wrestle Kingdom, and the comments from Yoda Tsuji, it's like they all respect him in terms of the management style, in terms of how he treats his people, because they all don't feel like they are treated with enough respect or looked after enough in New Japan. And that's been like a prominent kind of thing. But there was obviously an interview that came out with Kidani this week in Playboy, right? Even more amazing, like before this Playboy interview, at the start of the article, a comedian gave an incredible business summary of the transfer deal. This transfer of share stock between Bushiroad and TV Asahi and Cyberfight. And it was like I read it and I was like, oh, this is a really good analysis. Obviously, it's talking about, the value of the deal being worth about 6 years of, New Japan profit. And it was like, oh yeah, okay, this is really good assessment. And then you read up and it was like, oh, it comes from a comedian.
Hey, sometimes people shock you. They come out of nowhere.
Yeah, but no, so Kidani did an interview in Playboy, and thanks to Eric over at Joshing Around, who you can listen to every week on a Wednesday on our network. So head over there. He got us the interview transcript, and it was one of those things where he basically said, as a summary, that they were starting to look at letting go of New Japan back in 2019, when they felt like they couldn't handle the kind of global expansion, and that, as I mentioned earlier, that they had lost out at the point of being the anti-WWE kind of company because of the arrival of New Japan, of AEW. And then he then said that his final kind of decision was pretty much made once Netflix signed the deal with WWE, because of the colossal amount and how they can't compete with that, with Japanese broadcasting rights being absolutely nowhere close to that.
Right.
So by that point, and you can already see they started to kind of make the preparations because of the combination of the live and sports event business last year. It was already kind of in process. And now what he has said was that basically he expedited it forward because of the comments that Tsuji made. So let's find that bit there. There we go. So he says that on that day that Tsuji criticised the parent company Bushiroad, saying, "Hey Bushiroad, we wrestlers aren't cards in a card game. We are fighting the ring with our lives on the line." Kidani said, "To tell you the truth, I couldn't sleep until morning that day. Having poured so much passion into pro wrestling up to this point, I wondered why I had to be spoken to in such a manner. I was made to think deeply, not just about Tsuji's remarks themselves, but also about the reaction of some of the fans who agreed with them. Although, of course, we were already at a stage where we were looking for the right time to let go." So the interview said, so Tsuji's comments were the final trigger. And Kidani said, in an interview that has now been deleted, Tsuji said, quote, "Kidani isn't such a small man that he would sell the company over something like that," end quote. But human beings do make decisions based on things like that, because we are creatures of emotion. Bushiroad is a company that started in a small 100 square meter single room office with just 4 people dealing in card games. It is my entire life, just as they have pride in putting their lives on the line in a ring. I have absolute pride in founding our business. If they're going to show that level of rejection and resolve, we should not hold on to them any longer. If it's true that they became the final turning point, making me realise we should respect the pride of both sides and entrust them to TV Asahi and Cyber Agent, which represent a much larger stage for the next step. And there were some interesting responses to this, because Gado started doing his kind of he does the passive aggressive kind of tweeting where he never addresses anybody, but he does that, and he's basically like, petty people should be quiet. And Tai Chi was basically like, I said I wouldn't say anything because we were just going to let everything go, and then you did. And it's not worth even saying. And Shingo was agreeing with Gato. So there was kind of like this little bit of pushback, but no one would say outright because obviously it's not your business style. But it's interesting because Kidani's a interesting character in some ways because he is someone who has regularly been kind of on the other side to New Japan talent. You know, he's been brought up a number of times around Okada's departure from the company, being constantly involved with Okada, annoying Okada, creative suggestions on his look, you know, demanding he be places and then being annoyed when he wasn't, all those sorts of things. And that's Okada obviously spoke with Yano on his podcast earlier in this year, saying that, you know, he wasn't happy that he wasn't thanked for being part of Tanahashi's retirement. And at the time, it was interesting because people who New Japan sources had told us that, you know, Okada received like a standing ovation and had received kind of thanks from Tanahashi and from other members of the New Japan office. But it's clear that the relationship they have with this man is like something that seems to overrule that. And Yano's on the creative team, so that was obviously a really big shot across the board. But he's also had other things as well because the description I always get of him is he's kind of socially naive. So he's not someone who understands people. He's someone that's got himself in hot water but previously from the way he's described stardom wrestlers, where he's basically said that when they did like a press conference where they were in kind of costume with him and Tanahashi, he was basically like, so it's like, you know, he basically said this is like, they're here just to be like fan service and sexualized and that sort of thing, and that got him in hot water. And his response to that wasn't exactly very strong. It was like, oh, people are not as open-minded as they were. No one cared in any of the other industries that I work in. It's just like, oh my God.
No.
So it's one of those situations where it didn't change anything around what actually happened. It just sped it up, is what he's saying. And that's an interesting one. So you're saying that the comment of the talent, but it doesn't address the fact that, you know, there have been long-standing issues with the schedule. There's long-standing issues with the treatment, and there's long-standing issues with the pay. You know, I think this was during a period where they were doing pay negotiations, and them lowballing talent has been like a continuous thing since what feels like forever, but definitely in the last decade, even before AEW. You know, the reason why someone like Kenny Omega spoke about it, like they lowballed him continuously, and it's like you can't keep doing that. You have to start paying people a fair wage, and if New Japan are going to keep people over the next few years as things progress, and you really do want to have global expansion, then you know you need to have that kind of offer. It's not enough anymore to say I work for New Japan Pro Wrestling. You know, you have to pay people, and they've moved in a positive direction this year with the 3-year deals. It gives people a lot more security, but you have to do more, and that will kind of be the key for that. But no, it's been a good start. It's a good start to the tour, and you know, there's some positive signs. Attendance so far, I think, is quite positive. They did a very similar number of Hokkaido on the second night that they did for a Tanahashi-led last G1 first night last year. So that's positive as well, and we'll see how they go. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I like watching people develop, I always say, like that. So this tour being wide open as well is fun, and we'll see how they go because obviously they had to remind themselves yesterday that they have they've got 16 more shows. 16 more shows.
Well, the Shota Umino concussion was very unfortunate. He is out for the rest of the G1, and I think there was a strong belief that he was a big contender to be a winner in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people expected him to win, or to be in major contention to then be able to challenge later, because you know the continual belief is that he will main event against Yoda Tsuji for the IWGP Heavyweight title next year. So losing him is a big blow. It's a big blow to him. He's another one that just seems to be starting to figure everything out to an extent. You know, he's still still something just not quite there sometimes with his crowd connection. I still think he would be better off as a heel, but they're not going to do that. And you know, the way that they're phrasing it, the way Tsuji's talking about it, is they want him to be the kind of the face that overcomes. And I don't know if they're ever going to get there with that, but sometimes injuries can be a blessing in that way. And yeah, fair play to them for actually pulling him. because if you remember, like last year,
Oh yeah.
Takeshi got knocked out in the semi-final, wrestled the next day, wrestled on Dynamite, on Collision in Glasgow on the Wednesday after.
Yep. Yep.
Um, they've done it before. Naito got knocked out in the Ospreay semi-final a few years ago as well. Went on to wrestle the next day in the final. It's happened continuously. They are very reluctant to pull people out, especially when it comes to something like that that's not as distinguishable from like a serious injury. But and it's one of them. They've had a run. This is the third year in a row now with major pullouts. So it was Naito in 2024, Gabe Kid last year. So yeah, it's a shame, but it is what it is. Points are forfeited, and you move forward. So, talking of moving forward and switching companies, AEW have
transition. Nicely done.
Cheers. Yeah, I gotta do something right occasionally.
Oh, stop.
AEW next Sunday have the Redemption pay-per-view out of Montreal, Canada. And this was an added pay-per-view to the year, bringing us up to 11 events for the cycle.
Whew.
Having originally been, I believe, I know Dave Miles has confirmed this as well. The original thinking was perhaps to move Wrestle Dream into the summer, and instead we now have the additional number on the calendar. So let's talk a little bit about Redemption, because obviously it's probably been the most talked about this week, to the point I nearly banned it from our Discord this week.
Yeah, it was well, this, and then like there was a mixed reaction to Dynamite on Wednesday, so it I don't know. It's just hard to look at this pay-per-view, and especially with All In so close behind it. Even though All In is not that close behind it, it just feels closer behind it, and be like, what are we going to do here? Like, it's in that odd position where it's like you're looking at it. Doesn't, I guess, to me, let me put it this way, it doesn't feel like the feuds that we're seeing in Redemption are necessarily in service of anything that's going to happen at All In. Like, they don't seem to. Now, maybe that'll come up later, whatever, but I'm kind of like, all right, I guess we could do this. So it sort of seems like I don't know, you're stopping at a rest stop before you get to your actual destination, but the rest stop could be any rest stop. It isn't really meaningful. And I do know that they added that Bucks match last night. So, that's a little bit more tying something together, I guess, maybe, ? But it's, I think that's the biggest piece of this. It feels very thrown together.
Well, it's because it is very thrown together.
Yeah, I know,
like,
but I'm trying to say, it still feels thrown together. I think we've had thrown together matches and shows and pay-per-views before, and sometimes it's like, no, this seems like it's supposed to be, this is coming across as put together, and like, this makes sense, and I don't know that this is.
I think there's a combination of factors, right? So first of all is ripping the main event out. So you did it on TV. It was, very good TV show. And it gave a great moment. But the key thing was, and I remember like Dave Meltzer wrote in The Observer like that week, like why would you do it unless you have something bigger behind it? So his expectation was that they would have something bigger for the AEW Men's World Championship match in order to make up for picking this one out. Because if you think about it, the only time that they've kind of overpromised on something and underdelivered, or like threatened to do that. Sorry, not that they actually done it, but they threatened to do that, was considered to be like All Out 2021, where they teased the Omega Page match, and then they put tickets on sale. The pre-sale was the next day, so I think it was July 8th, and the pre-sale the next day. And then, in the next few weeks, they realized they would have to pull the match. They pulled the match. There's no choice in that. So then when you do that, like Tony Khan spoke about, like, I wanted to make sure that we deliver for those fans that had bought those tickets, if, and some of them might have been just wanting to because it was the first pay-per-view back in a bigger city post-COVID. But a lot of people were really invested in that event. And if you look at the numbers that summer, you can see that. So it was like, we need to over-deliver in order to make up for what we took. And they did. Obviously they had the CM Punk debut match there. But then also they had the big kind of surprises with Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole. And then they had, some incredible matches like the Lucha Brothers Young Bucks cage match. So it was one of those events that people remember and will always probably rank highly in AEW history. So his whole thing was, we can't underdeliver for that. And I think you're in a situation here where you have overpromised in some ways because you promised a title change. You started teasing that on your own television. It's not something people made up or fans
Nope.
kind of created the expectation stuff.
Nope.
You created that expectation when
Yep.
you started having both MJF and Kenny Omega tease this event was there because it was supposed to be there. You know, this event exists for Kenny Omega to win the Men's World Championship there. And then you get to a point where, okay, we can't deliver that. So what else are we going to deliver? And what they've settled on is Kenny Omega and Kevin Knight. So see, noise around this started kind of last weekend to the start of the week. But what did you actually think of the actual setup on the show on Wednesday?
Ooh, this was rough, right?
Okay.
Like, I'm not saying that every match or every title match has to have conflict, but the total absence of conflict doesn't help. And I think that was kind of my other piece of this is I think Kevin Knight is really good, but I don't think he's ready for this spot. And I think the setup kind of underlined that a little bit. I don't think that Kevin Knight would never be ready to spot. And I think this is, to me, this is like putting Fletcher in a title match before he has his feud with before he has his feud with Will Ospreay. Like,
right.
That's my perspective on this. And I say that as somebody who thinks, I think Kevin Knight is a great wrestler. I think he's still working on like his promos and his connection to the audience. I have every confidence he's going to get there. Like, I think it's doable, but I think he's not quite ready for a spot and his relationship with the audience is not ready for this spot. And so as a result, it's kind of like, Jesus, of all the things we could have done, we picked this, right? Mm-hmm. So that to me is kind of hurting it. The setup for me was just weird, right? I do think that it was an entertaining segment on some level. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, again, we're in this weird disconnect where the whole story is that literally the promo that opened the show was Moxley telling Ospreay that he has to be more like a killer. And so in this promo, Ospreay comes out and talks about how much he loves and respects Kenny Omega and how incredible he is. And it's like, what, are these two stories going to intersect at all? Is there any point to any of this? Like, what?
Oh, they're doing the trios this week.
Sure, but like, I don't know. I'd like some of this to be text. Like, I don't know. That was weird, right? So you have basically, Kenny comes out, he thanks the audience. The Young Bucks are there to talk about how great Kenny is. Kenny's there to talk about how great he is and his relationship with the audience is and how he didn't expect this to happen and blah, blah. That was all fine. That was all good. Then you have Ospreay comes out and Ospreay's like, Kenny, you're the most amazing person in the world. I'm so lucky to know you. I'm so grateful for every second we have together. At one point I thought you were dead and I'd never wrestle you again. And now I get to wrestle you again. And it's like the greatest thing that's ever happened to me because this is where the best wrestle and we are the best and this is awesome, right? All of this lovely, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, I kind of can't help but feel like the lead ups to their other matches where they fucking hated each other was a little bit better. Mm. I get it. Like, I'm not saying you have to have that level of hate and you can't have a respect match, but this is still kind of leaving me cold. So that was kind of like, I was like, oh, okay. And so then you have Kevin Knight come out and Kevin Knight's like, hey, I deserve a title match because MJF told me I could have one. And then
he says lots of things,
which is like, what? Like you're trying to like, okay, all right, like fine. And then you have this whole weird thing where Kenny did his best. Like I give Kenny credit, and I do agree that the promo was. It was like, I'm going to try and tie this together. I liked the touchback to like the Don Callis stuff. I thought Kenny's whole thing about how nobody celebrated me and I thought it was because of the pandemic, but really it's because everyone hated me because I turned into an asshole. Beautiful. Right. And this is where I wish that they had tied in some of the speedball stuff more. And I wish he'd had the opportunity to have that big speedball feud because I think Kevin Knight would have benefited from that. And that would have tied the story together even a little bit better. Right. Where Kenny could talk about like, or Kevin Knight could talk about like everything he's given up. Right. And what he's done to get to this place. Right. All that other shit. And instead, it's just like, Kenny's trying hard to put this together. He's, God love him. I agreed with Tunnel Talk that his syntax was off just enough that it did seem like he had this auto-translated from Japanese to English, like by AI, because there were things that he said that I was like, what? Okay. Sure, buddy. Like, I get it. But like part of that for me is like, that's what makes Kenny Omega so endearing is that he does talk like an absolute, like a Ren Fair freak sometimes. And you're just like, yeah, I'm with you, buddy. I will go along with it. You are unique. There's no one else like you, So that's a big piece of it too, but I didn't feel like Kevin Knight was particularly good on the mic. I didn't feel like he himself, like he basically was like, I deserve a title shot because Max of Jacob Friedman told me I could have one. And it's like, do you want one? Like, he didn't really seem like he was that into it. He was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to have 2 belts. So it's going to be great. Like, there was none of that sort of hunger. Like, say a lot about Kyle Fletcher, but Kyle Fletcher puts his whole bussy into every fucking thing he does. Like, you are looking at that man and you believe all of this. Kevin Knight's like, yeah, I'm cool. And I'm just like, that's part of the disconnect, I think, with Kevin Knight. But I don't know. I thought that this segment was simultaneously good and terrible.
Okay.
And it was capped off by the absolute craziest fucking shit, which is the Death Riders coming out to drive off the Don Callis family. And even after you had part of the Death Riders beating the shit out of Babyface, Cope, and Christian.
Including Claudio being the same person here.
Correct. Yeah. Claudio was in both segments. So, like, it's like, what the fuck is going on, right? Do you guys know? Because I'm going to tell you, it doesn't seem like you do. And, like, I think there are times where you're like I said earlier, stuff's going on. People have to scramble. Plans got changed. We all get it. We've been there. Like, you think about the first Forbidden Door and how much went out the window with that, right? And I get frustrated a little bit too, because I feel like you could end up having looking at the card, you can end up having an absolutely spectacularly wrestled match with a really spectacular main event. Like, Kevin Knight and Kenny Omega are perfectly capable of absolutely tearing the house down, and I'm sure it'd be awesome. And I feel like that you end up with people being like, you all thought the pay-per-view was going to be terrible, blah, blah. I don't think the pay-per-view is going to be terrible. I just don't know that they're doing a really good job of convincing me that I need to spend another $50 this month to buy this, when I don't know how much of what's happening is going to have any, like, long-lasting implications for the rest of the summer, even, let alone the rest of the year. Right? So that's kind of there was some fucking weird shit in this show, and there was some weird shit in this promo segment. And, like, I need you guys to get to a place where I want to, like, Will Ospreay, I keep saying this, and he was less over than Kenny, like, by a lot. Like, by a lot. Like, Kenny was fucking, everybody was going berserk for Kenny. Ospreay was way less over than Kenny. That should scare the shit out of you. Right? Like, I think back to, like, Swerve and Danielson, and, like, Swerve was able to, with the absolute, like, fucking expertise that man had of riding that tweener line, because they kept fucking putting him up against baby faces and making him go against these baby faces. But he had the audience with him the entire fucking time, and he was like, I don't know that Will Ospreay has that ability, right? And so what are you going to do if Ospreay's getting the fuck booed out of him? Like, I think they probably could structure the match in such a way, whatever, yada, yada. But, like, I don't know. Again, all of these things could work out. All of this could end up being fine. I could just be saying this to say it. I'm perfectly happy if it does. I think it'll be great, and I'll talk about, hey, they pulled it off. But the clock is ticking, and I'm just wondering what the fuck is going on.
Okay. Where do I start?
I covered too many topics.
No,
we do this where we talk too much about too many topics, and then we don't go back. We then but
it's fine. No, we can work. It's good. So on the last bit, I don't see him getting booed, but I still don't understand why you'd want a mixed reaction to start with. You know, if this is going to be your new top babyface, I'm always curious about that, and I understand, like, our friend Matt was talking about, you know, potentially you want that because you want people to kind of want Kenny to win as well, so there's some sort of, like, jeopardy over the match rather than just being a coronation.
I agree with that.
I like that idea. I don't know if it actually plays out, and it's more just around preference at this point. And rather than, like, having this huge emotional kind of thing about it, I don't know, but there's definitely maybe something to that. I think that I thought it was interesting, obviously, with the Bucks getting involved with this Moxley and Ospreay thing, and they're basically saying, you know, you're untrustworthy because you're with the Death Riders, and he's like, how are you talk about untrustworthy? And it's like, on social media today, and it's like, well, Ospreay, like, yeah, they have absolutely issues with being untrustworthy, and obviously with their heel turn and stuff. But you're with a group that are attacking all the other baby faces, and you do nothing about it. Are we pretending that you don't see it? Are we pretending you don't watch? What are we pretending here? Like, I don't understand why you would think that everybody wouldn't look at you and thinking, so you're either one, very stupid, which is how, like, that Moxley promo left me feeling when he especially was talking to Kenny, made both the baby faces are very stupid, or you are a user, essentially, because you can't do this by yourself. That's, like, the two options that you've given yourself in kayfabe, so that makes no sense to me. But the thing around, like, the Kevin Knight match, so I'll take it back to, obviously, I watched Rich's video on this match, and I agree with quite a lot of his points in terms of they've regularly given people this kind of opportunity across the course of their history. And it's important because something obviously we talked about last week that WWE do not feel able to do. So it's something that can give you a leg up if you can continually build people from, when they come in at the start that you think have potential to be main eventers, to give them those opportunities when they're available. And a lot of the time they do come around, like by complete accident, or they come around because, you are putting something else on top, or you don't have anybody else. And I think one part of it is it exposes again that there are very limited people to work with when it comes to at the very top in terms of losing. Yep. So Knight is partly in this position because he'll lose. Let's be honest. It works for him to, but they're not willing to kind of sacrifice other people here. And then also, it is an opportunity for him. So you can look back and you can say, okay, people probably didn't think Adam Page should have been in the first title match at All Out in 2019.
Yep.
Okay, people didn't probably think that, I don't know, MJF should have faced John Moxley at All Out 2020. I don't know so much about that. I think he'd been built quite a lot by then. But, he'd had we'll get to that. I'm ripping up my own point here. They definitely didn't think that Jack Perry should have faced Bryan Danielson at All Out 2024.
No.
And, this is the latest of those. And then obviously Carl Fletcher last year, Wrestle Dream. Sorry, All Out in 2025.
Yeah, there were people who didn't think that was a good idea either.
Because they teased the Omega thing first, it made it worse. But I think I agree with that in terms of you need to put these people in these positions.
Absolutely.
But I also think that the way that they've got here is what's hindered this. So the way that people have reacted to it, the way people reacted in the building to chant things like no, or to chant he's not worthy, or those sort of things, I think it comes from a combination of factors. So when you look at some of those other matches that I've just discussed that have the kind of young upstart and the veteran, I can't believe I've just called Hangman a veteran at 34. Jesus, but that's the kind of setup, right? And the reason they did that continuously. If you think about in the first few years of AEW, they partner up people that were like new characters and experience. So you'd have like Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho. You'd have Cody Rhodes and MJF. You'd put Page with Omega. You put Darby with Moxley, with Jericho, with Cody, etc. So that was like a real key thing that helped them develop some of those names into becoming their own kind of stars in a really quick period. Like them four that I've just mentioned, on the men's side, MJF, Darby, Hangman, Orange Cassidy, they're probably the most prominent, right, that came through in that period. So that was their strategy. So it is kind of a continuation of that. The problem that they've had with this one is, I think there's quite a few different factors. First of all, it's the fact that everybody knows that Omega's getting a short title reign.
Yes.
So they have an expectation that after waiting so long for this babyface world title reign for Kenny Omega, that they want everything out of it that they've kind of envisioned. And what they hadn't envisioned was that one of the programs would be with somebody that they don't see on the main event level. Right. And especially after losing the kind of, the title win from Montreal. So that one will kind of stick there. That's an expectation thing that they've built. That's about the overpromising sort of thing. And that's also something that, I never considered with the Bryan Danielson one when he had the reign in 2024, that people were disappointed in the Jack Perry choice because they wanted to see him have, those special opponents in the last thing. And, all he wrestled really was, he did the Jack Perry match, he did the Nigel McGuinness match on Grand Slam, he did the very weird Dynamite match announced the day before with Okada. Less said about that one, the better. To be honest with you. And then obviously they went straight into the Moxley loss at Wrestle Dream. So, but there were a lot of people that were disappointed in Jack being that match because, again, they envisioned, like, what can we get out of this kind of, we know it's like a short run, we know it's like, well, at times some people didn't, they thought it was going to be longer, but, looking back, they were like, could they have done more with that in that position? It meant something to them because they were heavily invested in that character, in that wrestler's journey. And then they felt a little bit unfulfilled when it came to the run. And, for me, it was like, I always looked at that pay-per-view All Out 2024 and I thought they got away with it because that wasn't the main event. It wasn't the big match on the card. The big match on the card was a feud ender at time, between Page and Swerve. And I guess that's the other factor in this as well, is that there is no Page and Swerve this time. There is no main event match or big drawing thing underneath that people have the same amount of investment or more investment in to kind of overlook it. And that's not to say there's things that people aren't invested in, but there's a difference between that and what are essentially drawing matches, right? So I think that's part of it. And then I think the first part is the setup, because when you look back at some of the setups that were mentioned, the Page Jericho one went all the way from Double or Nothing up to All Out. The MJF one was, a month and a half program into All Out, and obviously he'd had, as you mentioned, with talking about Fletcher, he'd had the program with Cody Rhodes, going into the spring and summer,
with Ospreay.
No, I mean MJF.
Oh, okay.
MJF
Sorry.
had the
You
program.
said Fletcher.
Yeah. No, I say it's similar.
Like,
No, it's similar to what your point with Fletcher and Ospreay. It's like
yes.
He'd had the program with Cody Rhodes. He'd been raised up to that main level. He got a win over Rhodes.
Yes.
So going into the match with Moxley, it wasn't like he hasn't been presented on TV like a main eventer. He was getting plenty of TV time, plenty of promo time at that point. He had that focus. And then they delivered what is one of my fucking most hated feuds probably ever, but saved kind of by the match. All that stuff with like Dictator John and all that stuff and the election stuff, like shut that. I fucking hate that. But he had that time. And then when you look at Jack Perry's on the opposite side, that was kind of thrown out. Yeah, I can understand that. At least there was some heat to it that he attacked him. There's no heat here. And that was the same with the Carl Fletcher one. So yes, with the Carl Fletcher one, like you had the Will Ospreay program in terms of elevating him up to people to see him more than what he was. You also had the fact that he beat Hiromu Takahashi at Forbidden Door like literally right before. And then even though he was a substitute, and as much as Tony denies it, everyone else said otherwise, it's like they did do something in the build to try and make it into something. So they had him attack and take out Kenny Omega. And then they did the long promo following the Josh Alexander Page match on the next Dynamite, where they kind of sold you on it for a long period of time. And they fleshed out a similar story to what they are here, in terms of Page saying, I understand why you did it. I've been in those kind of shoes, but you can do this in a better way, or something. So by the time they actually got to the end of that promo and they confirmed the match, the crowd didn't like reject it like they did on Wednesday night. They were all for it. And yeah, it received plenty of criticism like that, to the point, and people thought it wouldn't draw because, I remember because it was up against WrestlePalooza as well. I think Dave Meltzer had his estimate as like, will they cross 100,000? Instead, they do 137k and they're up massively on All Out the previous year, or Wrestle Dream the previous year, depending which one you take, same number. So it was like a massive success that was bred off the fact that it went against this sentiment that people kind of thought it would fail. And that was partly because Fletcher was the main event opponent. But I do think that there will be part of it that will be kind of held by the fact of their kind of reputation on pay-per-view. I think part of it will be there will be an investment in wanting to see Omega in probably his only defense as champion that will probably hold more than that. And it probably will help Knight in the long term. But I do agree that the setup's been poor, and especially when you have a guy go out there and basically whine about I want a title match sort of thing. And then instead of getting heat, like you do the attack on Omega and then he just gets the shit beat out of him by Darby Allin. And it's like it's mind-numbing, right? And it's one of those things. So there was a lot of kind of sentiment around last week's Dynamite, right? And there were some people that spoke very publicly about it, and there's some pushback and all the normal things. And we got to the point where a lot of people were defending the show more than the people involved in the show, which always kind of makes me laugh. But I don't think anyone I spoke to thought that show was a good show they put out because there were so many logic gaps. And this is where you can see where the changes in the booking are creating kind of havoc. In that you're now going to have to do the Darby Allin thing on a week's notice on Dynamite. You've just had this guy win the world title. You want to make him being beat by Kevin Knight a really big thing, and now it feels just kind of like something that has to happen because he has the match with Omega.
Yep.
Okay. You did the Cope and Christian come back, defending the belts against Death Riders, who just got a title shot, even though like the Bucks have been winning match after match after match. And then they get attacked in the same way, in the same exact setup practically as what they did against the Dogs for last month.
Yep.
It's kind of very lazy. Then you've got kind of the Hangman thing. Look, they brought him out to chase a rating. They got the number, but everything else they did devalued him. That's the point. Like people go, oh, why isn't he a follow up? Like he spoke about, like, oh, I might not be back yet. No, the point is that you make things feel important. That's why people are moaning about kind of making like matches that feel important. That's why people are moaning about that. It's like you make your key people feel important. And if the answer is, would you do this you know, to me it was like, would you do this with John Moxley? No. Would you do this with MJF? No. Would you do this with Adam Copeland? No. But you do it with him, and you'll do it with Kenny to an extent as well. And it's frustrating because it's the same story over and over again. And especially when this promo will be the one they call back to in 2 years, it'll be the one that's all in the video packages, then yeah, you should cover it. Because when you look at that rating, you know, that rating is, as much as people are going, oh, you can't criticize the show because of the rating. Well, the rating comes from a combination of three things. It comes from competition, it comes from what they did last week, and it comes from what's advertised. That's it. You know, that's how, and you get some, I guess, from like the continuation of things. So it's like there were lots of things on this show that were illogical and made little sense, or just felt like they either went on too long or didn't go right. And it's like you could see the cracks after a lot of time where they've kind of been covering up certain things going on by the shows that the delivery. You could actually see the cracks, I think, for the first time last week. So it's like there are things that they need to kind of look at, and there's things around this build that you just need to recover it and then start again fresh. And obviously the impact of losing that world title match, of that being pushed up by Max's call, has had a huge effect on everything else. So we're now in like a flummox sort of thing. But, you know, I think I would be much more concerned if no one there acknowledged like what happened and being like, yeah, that didn't go well, than I would be if they, you know, if they were like, oh no, it was great. Yeah, everything's great. Like all these illogical things that make things like feel less important. It's great. But yeah, so I think I think that's what the thing is. So I think it's a good opportunity for Knight. He's not fully there yet, but he won't be at this stage. You know, he's still learning. He's someone that is very focused on his development. Someone who had great feedback when he was with New Japan as well, and you know, someone who'll move on to working with other kind of prominent people. You know, he's going to work Hangman this year, so he'll have a decent program there to work into. But it's a weird timing, and I think it's if it was a standard of a pay per view and there was something else loaded in the card, or it wasn't an event that they've just ripped something out and put a stronger card on TV for, then maybe it's different. I think that's the difficulty in the timing.
I think you just end up with people who are. I think anytime there's criticism of AEW that's justified, there are people who take it too far and then it whiplashes the other way. And suddenly it's like, how dare you be upset about any of this? And it's like, well, like, you know, like I said, I'm sure that there's going to be good matches. There's always good matches on AEW. And that's not to devalue those good matches or devalue the work that the wrestlers are doing. But if there's no reason for me to tune in because the stakes are non-existent or like aren't going to be meaningful, then like, again, you're asking me to spend money on, you're asking me to spend $50 on a pay-per-view every single month. As a person who lives in the US, you're asking me to spend $50 on a pay-per-view every single month. There's 11 pay-per-views this year, right? Every month. Okay. So what is it about this redemption pay-per-view that you want me to spend my money on when maybe I'm more interested in, you know, Forbidden Door because there were crossover matches, not that many, but a couple. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe I'm, you know, All In's coming up and, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the part where sometimes I'm like, again, the wrestling is never the problem. It's always fantastic. It's always spectacular. It's what you've come to expect from them.
And it bails them out. It bails out the creative.
It bails them out time after time after time. And you have people being like, oh my God, this was the greatest pay-per-view ever. I can't believe they put this together. You're right. It was freaking incredible. Like the matches were incredible. But again, if it doesn't mean anything long-term or there's nothing differentiating it, like, you know, again, you're asking me to spend a lot of money. So I'm not trying to shit on it. I'm not trying to say it's not worth it. I'm not trying to say that they're not capable of pulling it out. But it's just, like I said, I look at this and I'm kind of like, it's big picture stuff that I'm sort of pointing towards, right?
Yeah.
And trying to figure out like what is going on here? What is the vision for what this is? Because I'm struggling to see it sometimes, and I'm struggling to see why I should be rooting for some of these people. And like the weirdness, like I'm not even going to get into the part where the show opens with Danny Garcia giving Ospreay coaching advice on how to be a killer. And it's just like, and I say this as somebody who's a giant Danny Garcia fan. I think he's fucking awesome. When was the last time he won a freaking match? Like, you know what I mean? Like he had the Ring of Honor Pure tournament for a while, but like, I don't know that I would classify him as a champion. You know what I'm saying? Like, I couldn't think more highly of the guy. I think he's ridiculously underutilized, but he's out there to be the Death Rider's pin eater, him and Yuta. So it's like, and he's not even he's not even like the high level pin eater like Claudio and Pac are. He's the secondary, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, what is this telling the audience? It's not telling me that Will Ospreay is super important. I should be paying attention to him. It's he's sort of on the periphery of all this. I don't know. That's just how I feel, and I'm not trying to. Those are just my feelings.
It just needs work. You know, the Bucks are going in there to kind of fix part of the story and kind of step up, and you have to question, why does it need that? Why are you in a position where they have to go in and save the story again? Like, when is it that they're actually going to get their own story, considering that's all they've done this year? You know, they saved FTR's title reign, and I thought it was a good story. They had to go in and reboot, you know, Takeshita after the damage he took in the first part of the year. That's not just my opinion on that. You know, do the Stadium Stampede, because it's like a jinx if you don't work a pay-per-view. You know, and then you finally think, okay, you're going to start building kind of your own kind of quote-unquote redemption up, going towards this pay-per-view and All In. And no, now you've got to go in and reassert and kind of sort this one, because there needs to be a high-profile match on the show. Like, someone said to me last week, one of the most frustrating things around putting the Page thing and throwing it on the Collision to get the rating is putting him back in, like, a redemption would have made sense in terms of a draw for that pay-per-view. It would have given us something, like, on that show. And then they could have done the promo, and then they could have done something with him later on to build onto his next story. So it's like, you kind of gave up something that could have been a key attraction when you have a lack of them for this show. So that's kind of the thing there. But in terms of the match, I have no worries about the match. I think they've got a lot of work to do this week in terms of making people invested in these things, because as much as, like, it is a great card on paper in terms of in-ring, you know, if you minus the Jericho Ciampa Painmaker because it's fun stuff. You know, look, that's what it is, right? But, you know, Kenny and Kevin Knight should be a great match. You know, athletically, it's that veteran versus new guy, like his athleticism, and obviously Kenny's kind of streetwise ring style, his change of pace. That should be great. You know, Carl Fletcher and Bandido, who all he does is lose on AEW pay-per-views. That's his job. But that should be an incredible in-ring match. You know, you look at that. Absolutely. That's two of the great, you know, men's young talents that they have. You've got Andrade facing Mark Davis, who's had kind of a bit of resurgence this year of his own. Notice that Andrade has been kind of moved away from the world title primarily for, like, the mid card now that MJF's out. Kind of little bit same scenario in the way they're talking to what Paige is supposed to be doing, which is not great. But, you know, you got to fix that a little bit. But that one should be, again, really good on paper. Cope and Christian versus Claudio and Pac, I don't care. Sorry.
It'll be fine. It won't be good, but it'll be fine.
And then you've got, you know, outside the world title, obviously you've got your advertised, and obviously, Bucks versus Moxley and Will Ospreay should be great. I think you've got to be really careful what you do there, because, you know, the Bucks shouldn't be really taking a loss going into their world title thing. Actually, I think it should be Moxley that takes a loss there, and you do something there to further that story, to move Will Ospreay away from this kind of tweener position where he is, where, you know, he should be untrusted by the rest of the roster because he's with this group of people that hurt them, and his attitude is it as well, they're nice to me. So I think you've got to move something forward there. So that would be interesting to see the result, but that's probably the only one where you can't really see the result coming on a lot of these matches. And then on the women's side, you know, you've got Maya World taking on Hikaru Shida for the TBS title. I guess most people expect a change there because it's like playing off that redemption theme. I don't. Follow-up's been okay for her coming out of Forbidden Door, maybe massively strong. And then the women's world title match is something that, you know, feels very much kind of a given, although it felt like it shouldn't be because Tekla's been so strong in the last few months. But it feels like that's Willow's to win, and that is the one program that I forgive in some ways what's happened to it, because there's so many things that have got that snake bit, right? So you had the idea that, like, Willow would win the Owen, and then Mercedes would be the one that defeats Tekla, and then you have a more natural chase, because that chase goes back to her, like, taking the TBS off her last December. You can play off all that. And then you have that more natural feeling where the audience will want her to win rather than Mercedes at Wembley, which we've now flipped. And when it comes to the build, you know, obviously it looks like they were going to do some sort of angle in Japan with Tekla over there this weekend for Stardom. I know that's popular, everyone's Stardom, and I get that. I understand, like, you know, if you're really invested in one promotion, someone coming in and always winning your belts and no one coming over the other side and doing the same is going to grate on you. And especially if you're not a big fan of that talent. But, you know, and then Willow was going to TJPW this weekend, so they could have done something in Japan, so that would have been pretty cool as well. And you've lost the kind of ability to do that because obviously Willow had travel issues. So it's going to be a real snake bit program. and obviously they got the opportunity to do their face-to-face on Wednesday as well to get something out of it. So that's probably like the match with the most stakes on it, and that's what's missing, right? It doesn't have many stakes and like or unpredictable things. And I think they'll add a Mercedes match onto there for the star power as well. But those difference in stakes is the difference between them doing their kind of average buy in general and then doing a higher number. That's just kind of been how it's been for that sort of thing. But then obviously the the elephant in the room is who's not wrestling on this card, isn't it? Right. So if you have Darby get beat on Wednesday, does he not wrestle on this card? Obviously, he's been a major factor, world champion this year. MJF is missing time, as we kind of hinted towards last week. I think it was interesting. There was no reason given for that. I think if they just said injury, I think there would have been some pushback on that. So with discussions that were had, and especially with the consistent pitching for a freeway at Wembley, so it's an interesting one. But yeah, he won't be on this card. Adam Page isn't on this card. I think some of his creative is kind of disrupted by some of these changes as well. Could he make an appearance? I guess we'll see. And the big elephant in the room is Swerve Strickland is disappeared again for the second time this year. And that's a lot of people to miss. I'm going with the idea that Mercedes is going to wrestle on this card. But that's a lot of people to miss out of your kind of your top end of your roster. This is the main event of your roster, essentially. And out of that main event, you've got Moxley, Ospreay, and Omega wrestling. And that's it. Yeah, on the men's side. That's it. So you've got less main eventers not currently booked for that card than you have actually booked for that card at current. That's kind of an interesting place to be. And I think when you went to Collision on Thursday, did someone mention that you overheard when?
So I did go to Collision on Thursday, which was an interesting situation of itself. But there was somebody behind me because they do his commercial for Swerve's headphones, I think it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like, he's on screen, he's talking about the headphones, and then he goes off, and the guy behind me is like, yeah, Swerve's not at the pay-per-view. He's like, they're not using all their big stars. And I was like, well, that's accurate, fairly accurate. He is not going to be on the pay-per-view. So I just thought it was interesting that it's, the guys behind me were typical wrestling guys at a wrestling show, but, they were definitely mentioning it. So
yeah, look, and I think a lot of people are kind of talking around that subject at the moment. The point about that one is, and there's a reason people are talking around it, because there's things that they can't talk about. But I think that it's a situation that is very much, in a way, do you know, like the CM Punk thing that Dave reported, and he reported they had issues, and then he came back, and people kind of just moved on, right? Because he's come back, he's got the belt, no issues, he's done his press around it, move on, right? And it's kind of, and it was the same thing with like the John Moxley thing in 2024, right?
Yep.
Like, he came back, put a bag over Bryan Danielson's head, everybody moved on. And, it's the same thing here. Like, these things happen in wrestling from time to time. It needs a resolution. Hopefully, next couple of weeks he's back on TV and, things move on and no one thinks any wiser of it. Or if not, he's not. But, there's times where you can't avoid it and you just need to get on with it. And that's it with that situation, to be honest, at the moment. They just need to sort it out, really, to be honest. There's a few things like that. And, because now, as I said last week, you've got a lot of focus on now, like, who are all these big kind of main event players going to wrestle at Wembley? Who are going to be the second and third matches on each side, be it like men or women, who are going to help aid this stadium to draw,
Yep.
And so we're going to get more questions than answers, and you don't want more questions than answers. And I think that's what's kind of happened the last week, is suddenly we've gone from this thing where people are questioning things in a way that they weren't previously, because the TV was able to cover for so much, because, the wrestling in the ring has been very, very good, and the top end of the show has been good. And if the top end's good, then a lot of everything else kind of gets kind of glossed over. So I think that's kind of been in it. Was there anything else from your trip to Collision that you want to talk about?
Collision was, this is one of those things where, like, I don't know, I might sound like a cantankerous old man with some of this, but I had friends, one of my friends has been watching a lot of WWE documentaries, and it's been causing a lot of nostalgia with his childhood, because he's pretty confident that he saw Andre the Giant versus Hogan in Boston when that happened. So he was kind of like talking about that. And he had mentioned to me like a couple months ago that he wanted to go to a show and wanted to take our other friends, you know, and I was like, hey, we can totally do that. They're going to be back. They're going to be in Boston. You know, there's a Wednesday and a Thursday, and we picked based on scheduling. We picked the Thursday just because that was the easier day for us to go. Right. So I'm going into it and I'm like, this is going to be great. But like, these guys don't, my one friend went with me to another wrestling show. So she's like, I knew she was going to enjoy it. But the other two, I was like, I'd like to tell them a little bit about what's happening. Like, I'd like to give them some background and information about like where the feuds are, so they kind of know. But going into the match, we found out at Dynamite on Wednesday that the feuds we knew about were going to be Nick Wayne and Jack Perry, which I was like, oh, that'll be good, and Hikaru Shida and Queen Aminata. And I'm a big Queen Aminata fan, so I was like, this is going to be great. But without knowing any of the rest of the card, it was like, I can't really tell them anything. So you're in that awkward position of like someone's entrance music hits and you have to kind of lean over to be like, oh, this is so-and-so. It's awkward and terrible. And like that pretty much was it throughout the night. Like you also had the weird fucked upness, which was very similar to what happened on Wednesday on Dynamite, where the pre-show match was a Ring of Honor dark match between Garcia and Yuta against Evil Uno and Alex Reynolds, right? Yep. And it was a great match. The crowd was super into it. Yuta and Garcia got a ton of heat, but the follow-up to that on the live event started with Moxley doing his entrance for commentary between the Alex Blackwood and, did I say that correctly? No, Alex Brooks. No, Adam Brooks?
Adam Brooks.
The Australian guy. All right, Crystal's going to fucking kill me.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Australian dude versus Ospreay, right? So Moxley comes in and my friend's like, isn't this the same entrance music? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, but they're cheering him. And I was like, I can't explain it. Like, we can't get into it. Moxley got enormous cheers. He was super over. His entrance took forever. And then Ospreay came out and he also got pretty big cheers. But it was like that throughout the rest of the match. Like it was it was just a fucking weird thing, right? Like, I don't know. I think for me, like I kind of came to the point of, they also had Mercedes Moné out there. She gave a great promo. But there was no advertisement or indication that she was going to be there. And they sold like a decent amount for a Thursday taped Collision. But like part of me kept thinking, like, if you had announced even one or two of these people locally, you probably would have sold more tickets. Like I would have never bought tickets for this show if my friends didn't want to go. And I mean, I got 4 for $150, so it was super cheap. But then I'm like, part of me is like, do they care? We talked about this once a while ago. Like, do they care about their live ticket sales for like regular TV night shows? It doesn't seem like they do. And maybe they don't need to. Maybe this is where you get the money from the TV deals. And so the attendance is like, you know, the difference between having, you know, 2,000 people in Boston at MGM Fenway and 3,000 people at Boston MGM, it doesn't mean anything to them.
But part of it's about loyalty, isn't it? Like, yeah. Like you develop loyalty by rewarding people that come out and watch your shows, right? So, and this is where, like, the point about advertised cards to me is not always about, like, TV. You know, you only need, like, your main things for advertising for TV, right? So, in terms of it, like, for the rating. So, the rating's driven by, like, 1 or 2 big things on your show. So, like, this week, they advertise, obviously, you're coming off the back of title change, you're going to have increased interest there. You did the page return, you're going to have increased interest there to a slightly less degree. You advertise Mercedes Moné, tag match at the end. That's going to drive something towards it. That's enough for your TV in terms of the rating. But in terms of your live event, you need something more because you can never guarantee who's going to be there. Because you don't know. Like, Mercedes Moné in her hometown should be advertised. That's not fucking rocket science.
I don't see why you wouldn't, at least when you're advertising, be like, you will see, like, give you some people, like, I started off with a fucking Ospreay match, which, like I said, I wasn't expecting. So I was like, oh, holy shit, it's Ospreay, right? Yeah. And then you had a Ring of Honor world title match. Like, again, I not all of this is a big deal. And, like, I don't want people to, like, I think for me, sometimes I think you could get really hung up. But I also think there's this degree to which sometimes it's just baffling. There's so many small things that AEW, if they did like a tiny little thing more here and there, could help themselves out so much. And I think sometimes, like, being a fan of this promotion for so long, you're like, why are you doing these really tiny things that could help you? But like, maybe you don't care, maybe you don't want to, and that's fine. But it's like watching a friend go on. It's like watching a friend go on date after date after date and be like, yeah, you know, you don't brush your teeth before you leave the house. Yeah. Like, help yourself.
But that's like, it's not even about like, obviously, like, the whole Brian Alvarez thing blew up, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
his thing was about wanting to be the company to be bigger than WWE. I don't really care about that. What I care
No.
about is your relationship with it as a fan, right? So when it comes to things like that, or something like this week, like the situation with Heels, which is basically on like an exodus, but no one's really been informed and they're still taking money. Like, those are the sort of things that affect your relationship with a company as a fan.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And those are the things that are important in terms of, will you buy a ticket next time? You know, they have a real big problem, and they always have, with people buying tickets for the first show and then not going back. Right?
Right.
And some of that is around that experience. It's about cultivating that experience. It's about all those sort of things. So I get to see the wrestlers I want to see is quite of a key part to that. You know, that's why I think, you know, you have pay-per-views are such destinations in some ways. And it's not just because, you know, it's, you know, the card's going to be fantastic and that, but you know who you're going to fucking see. You're going to see John Moxley wrestle. Well, you see that every week on Dynamite, you know. But you're going to see MJF wrestle. You're going to see Will Ospreay wrestle. You're going to see the Young Bucks wrestle. You're going to see, you know, whoever. You're going to see Cage and Cope wrestle, because you ain't going to see them on TV because they get rid off every 2 weeks. But, you know, you're going to see everybody. Whereas you can't go, you don't know who the fuck you're going to get.
I think about the shows that you went to in Aganis in like 2022 and 2023. And like, I think about, you know, the matches that I saw and the number of wrestlers that I saw and the fan favorites that I saw. And there's just no comparison with the shows today, right? And I'm not trying to shit on anybody that had a match on Thursday night, because I think, you know, variously they were all good matches and I really enjoyed them. But like, I don't think the show wants me to have the relationship with the wrestlers that were on that show that I had with the wrestlers in 2021. Like, it doesn't seem like the show's interested, or the promotion is interested in having those folks get over to the degree that like the Elite did, right? Or that, like, you know, even Yuta did. Like, I think back to that show I went to in Aganis, which was the fucking taped Rampage was Trent versus Bryan Danielson and Yuta versus Mox. And on the Dynamite, we had FTR versus Bucks too.
Yeah.
Like, the riches were unbelievable, and like I just can't compare with you know, Jack Perry versus Nick Wayne, which was the best, for my money, the best match of the night that I saw. Like, I thought that was fantastic, and I you know, but I don't know. Like, I think about it, and I think about, like, the funny part was, of all the things, right? So there's a famous Chinese restaurant up here called the Kowloon, and I should say Chinese, but I mean Chinese American restaurant. Like, it's old school 70s style. Like, you're going to get an orange chicken and you're going to get like a tiki drink, and it's like a giant restaurant. And they've always had relationships with wrestlers. If you go in there now, there's just giant celebrity photos on the walls, and like 50% of them are wrestlers, right? So my friend who came with me has been watching all the WWE documentaries. He follows the Kowloon on Instagram. And if you've ever wanted to know what middle-aged white straight men are following on Instagram, it's fucking their favorite restaurants. So he follows the Kowloon on Instagram. And so Ciampa came out and he goes, wait a minute. And he immediately goes to his Instagram and he's like, he was at the Kowloon, and he cheered for him. And I was like, you've got to be shitting me. Like, this is the level of investment we've got. Hey, I'll take anything if you're enjoying it. But I don't know. Like, I guess that's the piece for me where it's like, what's missing for me as a consumer to make me want to go back again? And part of it is I have no fucking idea what the show is going to be like and who's going to be on it. I have a bit more confidence in a Dynamite because I have a bit more confidence that I'm going to see people. But for a collision like that, I have no confidence. And that's like, if that's their business model, and that's fine, that's okay. I'm not complaining about it. I had a great time. I saw some phenomenal matches, but I don't know. It's just, when people are mad that people complain about this stuff sometimes, I'm just like, don't you get that I'm not upset from some kind of like arbitrary reason where I'm coming out at this like from a third party, like I'm the voice of the casual fan and I have to take a stand because it's going to get me clicks and views. Like, I'm genuinely expressing my feeling in being a consumer who's gone to this product and like is debating whether I'm going to spend more money on it, right? Like, and not knowing who I'm going to see before I go is kind of a piece of that for me.
But I think you hit on something else, is that if you see like a really top card the first time, and then the next year the offering's less, then you're going to be less likely. You're like, oh, I'll just wait till they come back again, right? Like, unless there's something that's really hot that you really need to see at that moment, like, that's generally it. We are driven in that way, and especially now, you know, as incomes are more challenged, then people are looking at making sure that what they do see has that value created for it. So if it doesn't have that value, they're not going to invest in it. And I think, you know, it's an interesting one looking at their last year in terms of TV Dynamite numbers, where you had very strong Q4 last year, very strong Q1, and then since April, the markets to markets have shown decline. In general. So, there's been a couple of good houses. There's always a couple of good houses. I think upcoming they've got Baltimore and Detroit Dynamites that are tracking ahead. But then you've also got a Detroit Collision. This proves your example in terms of the imbalance between like the programming from a live perspective that's still under 1,000 tickets,
Right.
For Detroit, like huge major market, a couple of weeks away. So there is something to be said for that. And that's where the argument is for me around advertising. The thing around advertising, that Roanoke Collision last week, who was on the poster advertised for that? The main person on the poster was Will Ospreay. Was he on the show? No. Like, God damn it. Like, that's where it's key. That's where you're talking about, because you actually have to put these things in the context of where they actually matter. And it's like, how does that affect you as a live consumer? And then why is this huge differentiation now between the pay-per-view offering and the pay-per-view kind of results in terms of pay-per-view buys and the pay-per-view kind of, especially the pay-per-view attendance and the TV attendance, which is not showing signs of improvement, continuous after strong Q4 and Q1. So yeah, that's kind of where they're at. But it'll be an interesting pay-per-view to watch. I'm sure it'll be a great in-ring pay-per-view. I'm sure they're rescuing that. I'll be really interested to see what they do next week with their TV, because I think there'll be a drive to kind of fix some of the things that didn't work out this week. And
I wouldn't be shocked if it's not just an absolutely spectacular Dynamite, because I feel like we've seen this before where they've had sort of shit show Dynamites, and then the week after it's like, oh, this is fucking incredible, because everybody's like, yeah, that kind of sucked. Like,
but that's important. Like, the fact they actually respond to that stuff and they want to make it better is important, rather than doing the whole kind of, we don't need to listen to the internet or pretending they do like WWE do, right? I would absolutely 100% much rather have people say, hands up, that wasn't great, we got things we've got to fix, there's things that have impacted it, but at the end of the day, that doesn't matter to our viewer or to our live audience. We have to deliver for them. And so and we'll see how the road to Wembley shakes out.
I just need to say one more thing about Collision. I need these guys to stop. Like, I need men to stop. Like, you're not funny. I know you want to shout things from the audience. You're not funny. You're not interesting. If you want to make a joke to your friend, that's fine. But if you're screaming stuff from the fucking audience in a quiet moment, don't do it. It's not, you're not the main character. No one in the fucking audience is there to see you. Shut the fuck up, sit your ass down, and stop. Okay. I would also like to say that I thought that the Boston audience did a great job of being super fucking into Shida versus Amanada, which was the main event, and was the main event in the live show as well. Like, it was like, there were a lot of dudes who were like, yeah, like the crowd was into it. I thought that they did a great job, and I thought people were, and they had been beaten up because we had some fucking crazy matches on that show with a lot of action. So weirdly, not the Bandito match, which ended up with a lot of mat wrestling and grappling, oddly enough, which I was like, okay.
He goes into that mode sometimes. Yeah.
He does, but I'm like, not what I want to see from you, sir. But it is what it is. But yeah, just shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Or make voice notes to yourself, or do something. But like, just Jesus fucking Christ. Like, it's 2026. We should be over this by now. Anyway, sorry.
No, I enjoyed it. Attention seekers are always fun. Just before we get on to our Q&A bit, just want to give you a little bit of a WWE update on Saturday night's main event.
Oh yeah, they had Saturday Night Main Event last night. Trish, I know nothing.
And I
know nothing about this. I haven't seen a recap. I haven't seen nothing. Talk to me about what happened.
Yeah. Well, I am sure that you were really, 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 really looking forward to JD McDonough versus Danhausen. I'm sure that was like top of your wish list for the year.
Wait, what? Who? But, JD McDonough versus who?
Yeah, so Danhausen.
That poor bastard.
That's a match.
Didn't they give JD McDonough some terrible... Yeah, didn't they give JD McDonough some terrible gimmick too, and then they took it away from him again? Or am I thinking of somebody else?
Oh, I don't know.
Pete Dunne, that's who I'm thinking of. Didn't he have to wear the little hat and pretend to be like Irish?
Maybe. I don't know. They've given him many a crap gimmick, mate. I can't keep up with that. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so I'm just going to read you a couple of sections from Saturday night's main event, because I'm sure you've been missing it, and I think you should have a summary, right?
Okay.
So let's begin with this is the end to the JD McDonough Danhausen match, okay? So McDonough mocks the New York crowd by confiscating Danhausen's Nick jersey, disrespecting it before laying it on Danhausen. Danhausen turned the tide after JD missed a moonsault, putting on the Knicks jersey and mounting a comeback with an atomic drop, a Northern Light suplex on Dominic. obviously because he was out there, and a counter into a cutter. As Danhausen prepared his reverse DDT, Dominic interfered again, allowing the Judgment Day to double team him. The duo retrieved a table and threatened to powerbomb one of the several miniature Danhausens who ran to ringside to aid the fan favourite. The distraction gave Danhausen time to unveil his clone machine on the entrance stage. After placing a stuffed cat in a clone machine, he has a clone machine. He puts it on the thing. It was little Danhausens machine. It was on the first one. We watched it. Yeah, we watched it. We watched on the first one. It's a clone machine. All these little things run out.
I may have repressed
and they aided him. Okay, good. Well, that's probably helpful. Okay, so after placing a stuffed cat inside, New York Knicks star Carl Anthony Towns emerged from the machine to a huge ovation. Towns entered the ring and chokeslammed JD McDonough before sending Dominic crashing through a table with another massive chokeslam. Danhausen capitalized by delivering his worst reverse DDT to pin McDonough. Okay? Now, if that cat's got anything to do with Hiromu Takahashi, I'm going to fucking chase Danhausen myself. Like, anyway.
Oh my God,
right?
that's your worst nightmare.
How do you feel about that one?
Oh my God. Can I just say, I mean, like, look, first of all, I am proud and happy for Danhausen that he has finally achieved his final clout chasing form, right? Like this man has not wanted anything for his career other than to stand next to more famous people. And now he can do that. And everybody is happy for him. Like, congratulations. And he's getting paid for it. Fantastic. It's terrible that he's bringing actual other wrestlers down with him, but you want to get a paycheck from the WWE, this is what you got to do. I get it. I do appreciate that they've managed to merge. It seems like he's the new Miz, basically, right? Like, he's out there to do like funny stuff with celebrities and matches that nobody takes seriously. Which, you know, if you paid a bunch of money to go to that show and that was what you wanted, hey, I get it. Good for you guys. Okay. Good God. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing.
Okay. All right, next bit.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, so the main match on the show, which was not the main event, right? But the last match on the show was the tag match with CM Punk and Cody Rhodes versus Gunther and Sami Zayn. And this is the finish of the match for you, okay? So the closing minutes featured non-stop chaos. Gunther locked Punk in a sleeper hold before Punk escaped and tagged Cody. Rhodes connected with Crossroads on Gunther, but Sami broke up the pinfall by sending Punk crashing into the referee. Punk answered with a go to sleep on Zayn, leaving Gunther alone with Cody. Cody accidentally struck Punk with a misfired disaster kick, allowing Gunther to grab the championship belt. He blasted Cody with it before planting him with a massive powerbomb. As a replacement referee sprinted to the ring, Nick Aldis, by the way, babyface general manager, pulled the official to the floor. Gunther confronted Aldis, only for Aldis to crack him with the championship belt, sending Gunther backwards into Punk's shoulders. Punk capitalized with a go-to-sleep and covered Gunther for the victory. So the babyface is there, won by the interference of a babyface general manager who cracked Gunther with a title belt so he could be pinned by CM Punk, and that's your setup for SummerSlam, and that's And then afterwards, there was a Punk and Cody Rhodes segment. See if you can think about which segment this is a carbon copy of, right? So after the match, Cody Rhodes and CM Punk celebrated together in the center of the ring, showing no outward signs of tension. However, as Punk casually tossed the championship belt over his shoulder, it inadvertently grazed Cody's face. Punk didn't notice, but Rhodes briefly looked annoyed before joining the celebration. That is the whole build for the first Hangman Page Samoa Joe. It was Samoa Joe and Hangman Page. It's the exact carbon copy.
Oh God, you're right. Are they feeding the AI all of the Dynamites too? They have to be, right? They have to be.
I imagine so.
They have to be feeding the AI Dynamites and not just like WWE shows.
Okay, so do you know what the main event of this show was? Because it wasn't that match. No hints.
It wasn't that. So Roman must have wrestled. If that wasn't the main event, then Roman must have wrestled.
Well, we're halfway there. So Roman was the main event, but the main event was a Jalen Brunson celebration with Roman Reigns. And okay, I'll read this. So this is the finish to the show, right? And obviously we talked about the Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins thing, and Seth Rollins trying to be a babyface and all that last week, okay? Right? And we also talked about, getting your own people over and everything like that. Okay. So Roman spoke about Madison Square Garden being the home of WWE and praised Bronson as a true champion before asking the crowd to acknowledge us. Just as the show appeared ready to end, Seth Rollins' music interrupted. Instead of Rollins, Indiana Pacers star Tyrese Halliburton appeared on the stage, drawing a chorus of boos from the New York crowd. The distraction allowed Rollins to attack Reigns from behind. After a super kick, Rollins prepared to deliver a curb stomp onto a steel chair, but Bronson stepped in front of Reigns to shield him. The delay gave Reigns enough time to recover, leap past Bronson, and level Rollins with a Superman punch before finishing him off with a spear to send the Madison Square Garden celebrating. You might as well just go fucking home.
This is so. It's just all. It's just all celebrities. Like this is like it's just all fucking celebrities. Like, I mean, I guess that's what the WWE fans want.
Yeah.
But
Naz,
I can't.
Would I want this program that's supposed to be in 13 years in the making to be about Tyrese Halliburton?
I mean, Jesus Christ, this sounds awful.
Seth's a geek. Why have they made Seth more of a geek? How have we done this?
They always make Seth into a geek, though. Seth is the one they always geek out.
But like Roman's just dog walking here. Like it's embarrassing. Like, how is he supposed to be a babyface? Like, how is he supposed to be a babyface after this? Like, are we going to heel turn him for the 15th time?
I mean, I'm sure they'll use him to put over some young up and comer like Sami Zayn.
Well, there you go. Maybe. That is your summary, all for you, of Saturday night's main event. I'm sure you'll be getting straight to that after this, but I knew you couldn't miss it, so we had to cover that. They also announced that they are running a live watch stream in Madison Square Garden of WrestleMania next year, and then on both nights they're going to have shows in the MSG Theatre. It has different names every week. One being NXT, and then the other being a AAA show entitled Internal Glory, which probably puts pay to the idea. Well, but gives probably more light to the idea that AEW were looking to run the same weekend in the US.
Yes.
And they've also announced that they're going to run the same night as All Out in Chicago at the Allstate Arena, which is the second edition of the One Worlds Collide show between NXT and AAA, and I'm sure you'll have main roster talent there. And I don't really think it'll make a huge difference to AEW's live attendance, being that it's only in the Now Arena especially. But it's all about, all the clicks being on them that weekend. That's the thing they chase, isn't it? So there's that. All right, so for the last part of the show, and seeing that we're 2 weeks in a row, and we never like talking for 2 weeks about lots of different subjects, we said we'd do a Q&A. So we asked everybody to send in their questions, be it on the board, be it on social media, be it on our Discord. And I think we've got plenty. So do you want to pick one and then I'll pick one, and we'll do it that way? And
I like it.
Let's do it. Choices. And remember to delete them afterwards, because we don't delete them afterwards. So I have the same questions 3 times, because I can't think of something.
I know which one I want answered. You know which one I want answered. This is from our friend DreamOx on the board. And I want to say shout out to DreamOx, my friend, for putting this up there, because this is a great question and I appreciate you. Is there any word on how Chuck Taylor's ankle is doing? Is there even a slight chance he could return in an in-ring capacity? How is he performing in his agenting job? Could he be used in different on-screen roles in the future? Commentary, managing, commissioner, exclamation point. Is there anything to read into regarding Trent's recent on-screen behavior? Is there anything to read into regarding the commissioner stuff at the latest Collision tapings? Why did Tony fumble by not giving the best friends either the tag or trios gold? The last one, I'm going to say Ox and not Mox. I don't know why he fumbled. I think we all agree that hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly millions of dollars, were lost because Best Friends did not get a gold run. They would have ended up absolutely fucking crushing it. It should have fucking happened. Think of the people who've had the fucking tag belts. There's no reason why you shouldn't have given it to Chuck and Trent. And I'm sorry, whatever.
Ricky Starks and Big Bill.
Ricky Starks and Big fucking Bill. The Gun Club before they were fun. When they were just douchebags. FTR 17 fucking times. I'm sorry, but Chuck Taylor is a way better wrestler than Adam Copeland could ever dream of being, and I will stand on that to my fucking death. I will stand on that to my death. I will say that to fucking Adam Copeland's face if I ever see him again. I would say it to his face. I'd say it to Chuck Taylor's face, but I know he knows this deep in his heart of hearts. But yeah, I'll let you answer the more impermeable questions, but like that one, that's my question. I'm sorry. If you listen to this podcast, you knew that was what I was answering.
So I got a really simple answer on that, and it's so in terms of like the injury, it's always kind of never say never, but I don't think anyone foresees anything kind of happening anytime soon. But he seems to be very happy in his kind of his producing role. He's helping top talent as well as people further down the card, and yeah, just pretty good in himself. That was pretty much it. It's really funny, right? Because some people you ask about and you get long, really detailed answers, and I think it's a very Chuck Taylor thing that when you ask about Chuck, you just get, yeah, he's good.
It's true.
And then you have to say, like, how's he doing? He's like, yeah, he's, seems pretty happy in his role, and he's working with this person, working with that person, and it's just like, that is so Chuck Taylor. We're never going to get any more than that. He's always going to leave you wanting more, no matter who I ask about it.
I will say he was telling people at the Beyond Orange Cassidy show in Worcester on Friday night, he was telling people that he was fully retired, and they did have a Chuck Taylor Memorial Tournament. But he was there in sort of a commissioning type role. I think they could absolutely use Chuck more like on TV. I think he's, again, like really good at that stuff, but you know what? If he's happy, I'm happy, and sounds like he's happy. So there you go.
No, I guess if you feel like there's a possibility you may never wrestle again, and I think that definitely is the situation here. You always say never because it's wrestling, right? But if you feel like you're in that situation, then sometimes you want to focus on what you can do in the next part of your life.
Yeah,
I guess I'm not even thinking for him, but I think that's a sentiment I've had expressed by others: is that you don't want to be clinging on to something you can't have, so you can focus on what can I do? What can I deliver? Right. What can I do that I'm going to enjoy? And the fact that he's been able to move into like that sort of role so quickly and stay with the company with that's a great thing. In terms of if you think about the people that were with you from the very start that were such a key part of your kind of your rise, and who could offer something, especially for people coming in from the independents to find something in themselves, then that's a perfect role for somebody like him. So. Yeah, if
they are going to do the demand versus the conglomeration, I would like him to have a cameo because I think that would be very good. I think it's also worth pointing out that he did have that neck surgery not too long ago, the fusion surgery. So it's not just his ankle at this point that could potentially be an issue.
Fair enough.
We should do more Chuck Taylor content on this podcast. I'm just saying, I stand by it.
Yeah, like we should do really, because like we can just change it. Like we can just maybe in 6 months if we continue doing Chuck Taylor content, people will be like, "You're just a pro best friends podcast."
Stop talking shit about how much we hate John Moxley. Be like, yeah, we actually do. But thank you, DreamOx, for asking that question, and I appreciate you. And continue.
I also do like that came from the board.
Yes,
right?
It did come from the.
It came from the board. So if people like to say like, what kind of people like write on the FLW board? It's people that care about Chuck Taylor.
Fuck yeah! God, now I'm in a good mood. Now I feel good. All right, you pick your question, Trish.
All right, nice simple one from Draw. So, analysis aside, what have been your favorite moments and matches in wrestling this year?
I feel it. Well, are we counting from January or are we counting from last July?
From January. Yeah, I'm taking the easy one out.
Jesus Christ, Trish. And you're asking me to use my short-term memory, which is never good.
No.
Jesus Christ. I did enjoy Kenny winning. I thought that was really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. I did like the beginnings of the Will Ospreay Death Rider stuff because I thought it was just fucking weird and like aggressively sexy. But I do think one of the things I'm struggling with is that I definitely struggle to find things that I'm like, wow, that was really irretrievably awesome this year, like that I'm super duper invested in. And I think that's, I'm sure that's coming across in my analysis, but I hope not too terribly much. But yeah, those are the things that jump out at me.
I think there's been a real lack of memorable things for me this year.
Tekla.
Yeah.
Tekla screaming, I didn't get banned from Japan. No, actually, I did get banned from Japan. That was I really enjoyed that. That was fucking a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think I struggled in terms of the American side with, I don't think there's been a great amount of really memorable promos for me, or matches that kind of have me kind of on the edge of my seat from kind of here to there. But for me, like, my favorite match of the year will still go back to Wrestle Kingdom, and it will still be the Tanahashi retirement and the emotions that building went through, and maybe the tail end of that card, whether it be the Aaron Wolf response. I've never seen a crowd like that before. That was incredible. Suji winning the belt from Takeshita and how great that match was, and then into the retirement match for Tanahashi and just the genuine emotion in that building. And then afterwards, when we're sat in a Okonomiyaki joint and we've got, Japanese fans in the same venue and then everybody just wants to start Go Ace chants. And it was just like a real euphoric feeling about wrestling that I don't think you get very often. See crowd at Double or Nothing, I thought was fantastic. That was really, really cool. And then my stupid one, this is stupid, but my stupid one will be I stayed an extra day in Japan to watch the Noah show, which wasn't like a major show, it's just a Korakuen, and it was Tetsuya Endo versus Azawa, and I really wanted to see that match. And there was a stupid moment in that where Endo broke Azawa's trophy, and all their reactions to it, I was just laughing about. Every time I think about it, I just start laughing, and I like things like that. It just made me happy in wrestling because we get so wrapped up in all the analysis and stuff like that. But it was just like I wanted to stay for that match. It was great. I had so much fun, and then we got to meet up with everybody afterwards and just sort of enjoy our last night in Tokyo. That was annoying. I had the stupid Goto puppet on my shoulder, and then two kids came over with their parents to introduce their puppets to mine. Like Chris Arthur and Chris Gallagher points out to me, he said, because I had this thing on my shoulder, I was just sat there eating. We were eating this it was an awful pizza. Pizza is just not allowed in Japan sometimes.
No, they shouldn't.
It was so bad. No. But I was like, I'll try it because the last night here I thought I'm gonna have something stupid, so I'll try like this pizza. It was awful. But like he said, they're gonna come over and there's one with like a gay kid on the shoulder and one with a Tanahashi on the shoulder, and he came and introduced it to the Goto.
That's
stuff
really
like
cute.
that, just like that sort of stuff that sticks in your brain, and they're the sort of things that it's not the actual thing on the show, but it's everything that's connected to it with the community and everything like that that makes it feel special to be a wrestling fan for me. So it was like that was really cool. I like that moment will stick in my brain forever. It's just like those cute little kids who just wanted to come introduce a puppet to another puppet, and like not being afraid that we were a big group of foreigners. It's gonna be scary if you're like 5-6 years old and there's all these people. But yeah, he was so cute. So we'll go with that one. Right, your turn.
Okay, this one is really interesting to me. I think I have an answer for it, but I don't know if it's very good. So Hell Pop, also on the board, said that we mentioned that there's a lot of different types amongst the AEW women, which is really cool. I think overall the WWE women's division is deeper, but there's a lot of sameness there, both in terms of presentation and background. I'd love to hear the two of you do a similar look at the NXT and WWE women soon. I would be especially curious as to what you think about Kendall Gray and her future there. I guess the first thing I think about when I read this, and part of this, like, I'm going to upfront disclaimer with like huge letters. I don't watch WWE regularly. I'm not as familiar with their women's roster. I don't watch NXT at all. I'm not familiar with their women's roster. My impression from the WWE content that I have seen is that a lot of this boils down to WWE having a very specific vision about what attractiveness and what women are allowed to be like, what they're allowed to look like, how they're allowed to move, how they're allowed to talk. And they have some very specific archetypes, and they sort of funnel women into those archetypes. And I think that sort of is fine. Like, I think it's, conventional attractiveness. We've seen all the stuff about women being encouraged to get breast augmentation and all that other bullshit, which is ridiculous. But, it's people's individual decisions as to whether they want to do that. But I think the sameness doesn't allow for anybody to kind of jump out. And I think sometimes when they do jump out, WWE sort of pushes them back into one of those boxes, right? Like so that's kind of the impression to me. I would be interested in watching some WWE women's matches. I think the challenge with any WWE matches, it's like you have no idea what the wrestlers are capable of because everything is agented the same, right? It's all the same. They're slow, same matches. Nobody's doing anything fun unless they've memorized a Bucks match and they can throw in a couple of their moves. Like, you're not doing anything overly nuts. So that's my answer to that one. It was a good question, and I think it's interesting.
I think you're onto something there in terms of, and I think we've seen this from people coming up from NXT, and especially in the recent case of like Sol Ruka, is that they rehearse those matches so much. And then when they get onto the main roster and are expected to kind of put things together, obviously with lots and lots of direction, but without that kind of comfort blanket of being able to go over it 10 times, they struggle. And there's an expectation on them, but they're not set up to succeed in that way because they've been basically prepared to do something completely different. And that's my reluctance in kind of championing some people when they are in NXT currently, is that I don't know how good you are. I don't know if you can do these things in front of these huge crowds, or you can adapt, or you can correct when things go wrong, or you have the ability to build matches in that way in those kind of bigger settings, because we're not seeing that. Basically, we're seeing somebody do a play line by line rather than improvisation. And there's always going to be that element of that in WWE because so many things are dictated to you. But you still need to be able to do all those major things on that big stage. And they're not set up for that. So I think it's a training failure at the moment. So it's really hard to say that person, you can say someone looks incredibly athletic, in terms of what they're able to do in NXT. You can say that in terms of these kind of pre-built matches, they're achieving things. Or you can look at, say, that their ability in a way to turn people from who have, even not wrestled or had little experience in wrestling into people that are able to do that is a part success for them. But until that turns into success on the main roster and you're able to do those sort of things on a day-to-day basis and be comfortable with those crowds and cut those promos and everything else that you need to do, there's a limit to it. So it's a difficult one because I think you're right in terms of an expectation of what they need to be. I do think, obviously, that it is better than it was 10, 15 years ago. Although I do think it's slightly regressed in recent years in that aspect. It felt like when Oscar came through it, that felt like such a sea change because it was like, here's this incredibly powerful, physical, striking Japanese woman. And she's just a killer, right? They presented her as a killer. Then she went to the main roster and Charlotte beat her straight away. And it was just like, what's the point? Like, you have the opportunities to kind of have those talent that are different, that have those different aspects to them, to really push them to be something different, and that doesn't always happen. I think there's more opportunities for them in general in terms of positions on cards and that sort of thing than there are currently in AEW. If you're not named Tony Storm and Mercedes Moné, but I still think there has been a regression from where they were a few years ago to where they are now. And yeah, my main point is that I just think that I can't judge anyone in NXT because we're seeing somebody basically do a play step by step by step by step rather than seeing someone actually, how they perform as a pro wrestler. And I think the Sol Ruka thing this year has really shone a light on that. I think the way that people talked around Tiffany Stratton when she was in NXT, and right, some of the performances against people like Becky Lynch were great, but then have we seen that kind of monopolize into that promise, I guess, essentially into something else on the main roster? And I guess that's the same you can say everywhere, but I think there's something to be said about the people that go elsewhere and get as many reps as they can, but that's always going to become limited, especially if you are, and a North American woman, because that talent depth pool is so shallow compared to the men that people aren't willing to wait and they'll want you in their systems as soon as they can.
Yeah.
Okay. So I should have laid these out better. I was just like, I should have organized what I wanted to talk about, but I don't do these things, so it's fine. So from Silent Jester Dan, Jake Lee names on our Discord. What is going on? Back to a recurring topic about in-ring homogenization, which is one of my favourite things to browbeat, I guess. What's the preferred style or look of in-ring wrestling that always clicks with you and you wish was more prevalent?
I feel like this is a question that I'm going to answer ignorantly. I don't know. It's one of those ones where I'm like, I like flippy stuff.
Yep.
I like flippy stuff. I don't know if I would say that I would full on like go for Lucha Libre, although I probably would really enjoy a Lucha Libre. If I just went to an arena Mexico, I'd probably have the greatest time of my life. But I think I enjoy high paced action rather than like slower, I'm I am more of a Will Ospreay fan than a Zack Sabre Jr. fan. I'll put it that way. But I also like comedy wrestling, and I don't know if this is a comedy wrestling question, because I think it's looking for more like styles in that regard then.
No, but that is a style, you know. Like I always look at AAA and think like some of the chaotic kind of comedy stuff on there that's missing now is still something that's leading to that being such a much kind of one track homogenized kind of thing where it's now just an extension to NXT. Then it is actually something by itself. Yeah, so for me, it's like my favorite style to watch is the kind of the strong style wrestling stuff. But I think we are at a point now where we have so much of these styles incorporated that it's hard to say that you want to see more of something. You know, same with like Lucha Libre in a way that a lot of those moves are incorporated. I guess my focal point has always been like it's having everything become more Americanized, like abandoning those styles. I think the current American style is such a fusion of like Lucha Libre, of like the fast track kind of Dragon Gate stuff, of the strong style stuff, you know, some British stuff, of the American TV style, that you kind of have this ultimate kind of fusion thing going on. And then there's this want to just kind of copy that and then move that back to the places where these come from. And I kind of, that's the bit that kind of worries me, because it's like, I don't want everything to become one style, an amalgamation of everything. I think the fact that you can have everything different is something that's very important, and having these kind of wrestlers that embody their own style in a way, and their own method of storytelling. It goes just beyond that, their own methods of doing promos, so not everything is in the same cadence, the same fucking layout, everything like that. I think that's really, really important for going forward, because it's probably going to be more about the individual to carry that than it may be about the promotions with the way things are going. Yeah.
Good questions. What's something that would be a terrible idea for AEW or New Japan Pro Wrestling, but that you would like them to do for you as a treat?
So, this is from our friend Gallup.
Yes, this is from our friend Mark Gallup.
So, I like this question a lot. And when I like a question a lot and I don't know the answer, I ask somebody who does. So, I asked a wrestler your question, and their answer is that they would like to have a Halloween show, but everyone is forced to wear costumes. And the special had zero to do with any existing storyline. No canon. Ooh. Characters die like The Simpsons. Maybe there's an animated portion. And that's what they would like to do. So that's my answer. I've stolen one from somebody else. So they want a Halloween show where everybody dies, basically.
I feel like that's the kind of stuff that I would be probably into, where you sort of just play with the format more than they do. Like, I wish they would do sometimes, again, not all the time. I think something like this where you're like, this doesn't count. There's nothing to this. Just some fucking crazy shit. Like something really crazy comedic or something totally outside the realm of possibility, similar to this Halloween idea. I wish they would take a little bit more chances like that. I would like to see them, quite honestly. I'd love to see them do intergender matches.
Yeah.
I wish they did those. I was thinking about that when you talk about like the strength of women in wrestling. And like, I think part of the challenge is that there's just not enough women wrestlers, and there's not enough women wrestlers getting time. And there's not enough women wrestlers who have enough people to face that are like, you know what I mean? There's not that caliber of like super high quality women wrestlers, that at least not in the United States anyway. Let me put it that way. I'm not trying to diss Japan here.
There's an issue around intergender matches, obviously, because everything else is going on. But I'd like to see like an intergender kind of tag tournament again, like sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think you could do that and have some interesting stories. Like, who wouldn't want to see, I don't know, like Mercedes team with Okada after this sort of stuff?
Oh, I mean, my God, that'd be amazing.
Or, you know, you can think about who else you said. All last year, all we wanted was like Adam Page and Tony Storm to tag on it.
Right.
But you could do all that sort of stuff, and with the characters that are developing, I think it'd be pretty cool. Like, just like a blind draw out the hat sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, that tournament they did for MJF and Adam Cole that they never did ever again after that.
Oh, yeah, but yeah, well, that was Snake Bip, so maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't do that one again. Oh, no, that was a strange one, right? It was a strange one. I've lost the one I wanted. Okay. So this is from Pat Absent on our Discord. What's a feud story in AEW that you see as especially successful model for how things should be executed? What can be learned from it and be repeated and built upon in future stories with different talent?
I feel like here's what it is. I feel like the Hollywood ending to me was extremely successful. The Toni Storm versus Mariah May feud, extremely successful. And I think part of what made it successful was there was a start point and a finish point. And when it was done, Mariah May went away. Right? Like, and I think the problem is like
she's in purgatory, never to be released.
She's dead now. We've got Blake Monpoopoo or whatever her name is. I feel like that was part of what made that successful, was that you had a story that like ended and like, you know what I mean? Like, and it I don't know. Like, I do feel like sometimes, I know that there's periods of times where people talk about this, like, that Sheamus got released from WWE and people are like, they should bring him in for a short 3-month run. And like, that's just not how wrestling contracts work. And like, it's just not how it's going to go. But it would be nice if there were feuds that had that kind of like, this is just a very specific period in time. We're going to build this up and do it for a year and then it's over and this person's going to go away. And like, we don't have to worry about moving them up in the card and we don't have to worry about like sliding them around. Like, I do feel like that's one of those, but again, that's a crazy thing that I'm coming out with. But I think that story was just, I think as far as storylines that start and finish, that was just fucking executed perfectly.
So my one would be the Kenny Hangman thing up to 2021, and it's not because of what they did in terms of the interrelationship between the characters. It's the fact that they played a lot of that story out in the tag division. So
yes,
rather than it just being another single story and then you struggling to find ways to kind of expedite it, you built that relationship and the audience's relationship with those characters, and then the motivations both had, but you put them in another division and you've thus made that division feel much stronger and feel much more important. And it's funny because, you know, you think I'm saying, oh, you need to put singles guys in a tag division, and you look at Adam Copeland and Christy, and do you think, is the division more important right now or not? No, it's not. But they played this story out across a weekly basis that felt more important, but raised up the profile of the division. And I think there is, you know, in some ways, weird attitudes towards the tag division. There have been people that refuse to kind of go and work in a tag division in recent years, on a regular basis. And I think that if you want other belts to feel important, then you need to make the effort to do that, and telling stories like that in that way in those sort of divisions will do that completely. So that would be my one on that.
Good. That's a good answer. I like that. I think we probably have time for one more each.
Okay. You going.
Oh God, that's my turn. What the fuck is wrong with me?
It's your turn. It's like Monopoly, but worse.
Okay, so this is from Sissy on the Discord. I'm not sure if it's been asked before. AEW tended to axe some storylines if they were not resonating with the audience, like the Nightmare Collective and that horrible Jared MJF feud. However, they have also gotten in the habit of stretching out stories in the belief that they'll be eventually successful, like Saraya and Jericho, Britt and Cole, the weird Sammy Scorpio feud, and whatever the Death Riders are doing right now. Basically, AEW called itself the alternative wrestling company in the beginning, so I'm curious if you all think that it's slowly inching its way into some sort of Attitude Era wrestling incarnation. I don't think it's going into the Attitude Era wrestling incarnation. I do agree with you, and I think this touches on my last question that I answered, which is I think there need to be more stories that are like fully thought out, and like, as opposed to just like, hey, what the fuck? Like, let's just go with this. And I agree with you that like there's some shit that you're just like, sometimes you look at stuff and you're like, how long did the Hurt Syndicate feud with the Demand for? Was it like 7 or 8 months?
Is that not
like,
still going? Are they not still going in
some way? Is it still going?
I don't know.
I mean, the Hurt Syndicate have disappeared off TV.
Well, they've got nothing better to do. They don't win. They don't lose belts. Why are they there?
Right. But I also feel like you could, going back to like the Hardy Family Office versus the Best Friends. I mean, that went on for like 9 months. You could give birth during the length of some of these feuds. And that's not to say that some of them are not good going out longer. Like, I think one of the nicest things about Hangman and Sora was that they sort of touched each other and then went away and then touched each other and went away. That's a weird way to put it, but all right, Leah. I'm getting the eyebrows on the Zoom. But like, I do think there's something to be said for like having a clear out point and understanding, like, I think this is where the hardest part comes into play. And I always said that like, as a booker, I think a lot of fantasy bookers and people who like, are like, I would have done this better, fucking me included, would have no difficult time, like, taking a story, launching it, and landing it. The problem is that you have to interact with what's going on around you, and you have to time it in such a way that it doesn't affect other stories, it doesn't interfere with other stories, and you have to make sure that it lands in a period of time where you want it to and fits into the pay-per-view that you're doing next and all that fun stuff. So that's really hard, and I definitely don't envy Tony Khan, like, in having to juggle all of those different things, but I do think that there's something to be said for, like, this is how long this is going, this is what the beats are going to be, and we're going to get out of it. And quite frankly, I think if you've hit the problem with having these monthly pay-per-views now is that you hit 4 pay-per-view cycles in 4 months, right? Mm-hmm. Where it used to be you could do 2 pay-per-views and the feud would stretch on for like a fucking half a year. So like it's hard to be like you can only do 3 pay-per-views and then a feud has to be over. But I also feel like the bigger problem is like you look at some of these things like where you have the blood and guts feud and then this freaking thing keeps going, or you have the cage match and the fucking feud keeps going. Like end the fucking feud when the feud is over. Like don't do a fucking cage match and then go on for another 6 weeks. Like it's over with. Like if the fucking Painmaker can't get his win back for freaking Ciampa, then like don't do this for another 3 months. Like
why does he need to get his win back? That's one of my biggest.
Well, he doesn't,
things. But that's one of my biggest things. So like like there's times where we have to have this parity booking. So this person has to get this, but it'd be so much more effective if they just won. They just won. Like.
Yep.
We always talk about the last person to elevate into their main event scene was Swerve Strickland, right? What happened?
Yep.
We beat Paige 2-0. Was it completely no? But it was, we beat 2-0 and then we left it. They weren't originally going to leave it, but then we left it and that was the right decision because it makes him stronger because you haven't done this thing where the other guy has to get his win back. Like, that really got awful long, like, MJF, Chris Jericho program where they had the Anarchy and they had the Blood and Guts both in, like, May, right? Should be done. It finished in fucking August with a cheap finish. Like, stop that shit. So I think that's something that's really kind of struck for me this year is that I look at how kind of interconnected and carefully woven and attention to detail they had at this time last year. And you can see that, it's not there this year. I think people thought it might be there and then it's all kind of falling apart very quickly. So it's like, and like things like the Bucks and Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay match, that's not something that's been planned out for months to play into this story. It's something that's been thrown together last week,
Right.
So it is what it is. But the ability that you need is to make that all match into your story, and I guess they haven't quite been able to do that this year. But yeah, my biggest hatred is just kind of repeating the same thing over and over and over. So stories following the exact same story beats. I mentioned the Copeland Christian thing having the same build practically to the pay-per-view for 2 months running. Okay, just get some ideas in there. Do something different. Think about things like that. And it's hard, right? Because it feels like there's only so much you can do with wrestling. But I'm always more invested in the people that are willing to try to do something different than I am the people who are doing the same things over and over again with just a new gloss of paint and a new name.
Yeah, all right. I think that's the way to go.
So this is the last one. What's the fucking pressure on that? I'm going to pick the last one. Ever go pick a proper one or a funny one?
I would always vote funny, but that's me.
All right, yeah. Okay, we're doing a funny one. So this is from our friend Cardo, who are Aussie in Japan. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a horrible flop and 10 being a monumental disaster, rate Yota Tsuji as a wrestler this year.
Oh my god. As a wrestler, can I just do it as someone who's really attractive and posts amazing Instagram photos? I mean, because he's getting 10 out of 10 for that. Like, he's getting 10 out of 10 for the hat. He gets 10 out of 10 for the jacket. He gets 10 out of 10 for the smile. He's got the really nice teeth. They don't look like Roman Reigns. He's not a freak in that way. He just, he has that wonderful combination of looking like he'd be very gentle and would take care of, like, if you gave him a small pet or an injured bird you found, he'd be very sweet and he'd put it in a box and he'd drive you to the animal shelter and you could return it. But he also looks, he could rail the life out of you if you were interested in doing it really fucking intense. Like, he'd be a sick freak if that was what you wanted. So 10 out of 10 for Yota Tsuji. Is any of this about his in-ring? Fucking no. Do I care? Fuck no. It's the end of the show. So there you go. 10 out of 10 for Yota Tsuji, Cardo.
We're not adding to that. That's it. That's it. I'm not even answering. That's it. That literally is it. The Q&A. I ain't being there.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there we go. So this has been. What? I told you I wasn't answering it.
No, you had to do it. You had to do it. I should have been quiet. I should have laughed silently, but that was just a beautiful way to go out.
Yeah. I'm not answering it. That's it.
That's what Yoda Sushi said.
Yes, that's what Why can we not get through one of these clothes on a show lately without
We're just having a good fucking time, people.
We are.
This is all we're doing at this podcast.
He's a beautiful
we have a good
man.
time.
He's a beautiful man.
He has some live event charisma. Woof.
He's doing that thing that like Jericho and that does, where he came out and like he's listening to the crowd at the G1 because he's like, I don't care if they're booing or cheering, I just want to hear it. And he's like, just sitting, he just nods and he's like, yeah, I got you. I was like, you smug bastard. He fucking knows. He's like, I got you so bad. I got Will Ospreay tweeting on his wedding day.
Nice.
Anyway, right. This has been episode 66.
60. You know what's going to happen next week, Trish, or the next 2 weeks. It's going to be episode 67, and everyone I know who's 15 or 16 is going to be like, "Oh my god, because I'm going to go like this the whole fucking show." 6-7. Sorry.
Well, I said to you last week, I was like, "What is this 6-7 mean?" It's like, "What does it mean?" You're like, "It means nothing." I'm like, "What's the fucking point?" Yeah. Okay, I'm old there. Anyway, this has been episode 66 of the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. We are part of the Social Suplex Network. You can listen to all our great podcasts on Red Circle, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And that includes the wonderful Ton to Talk out every Sunday. Join the girls for everything in terms of character development, stories, and fun in AEW. And our Ton to Talk crew includes Leah, who's our wonderful producer, who gets this to you as quick as you can, practically every single week.
The turnaround for last week was crazy. Leah fucking crushed it.
That was mental. So yeah, thank you very, very much. Because obviously, stories dictated that we move it, and it's not always easy. We have lives occasionally. We're going to go watch World Cup in a minute. So yeah, we have lives. Yeah. No, thank you to Leah for that. If you want to interact with us more, you can find us all on the Social Suplex Discord. Where this week I have learned that we all like retro video games. We all like Van Helsing. And Donatello is apparently our channel's favourite Ninja Turtle. So, yeah.
Okay.
So, strangely, the reel is more interesting than the fan fiction that's written about us. But if you do want to come and see what's happening, you can find the Discord link at socialsuplex.com, where you can also find a Social Suplex newsletter. We're on a stagger release, so come in and find some great features. Find some great coverage of Japan, great coverage of Europe, and by the time this comes out, the Americas and our front page will be in motion. So find out also at socialsuplex.com. If you wish to contact us, you can find us on Twitter at Trish and Sarah. You can find us on email at trishandsarahpod@gmail.com, and you can find us on Blue Sky under our own names, because we're never fixing that one. And every time that someone tags the podcast Twitter, I want to tag it to you, but I'm not quite that bad.
Okay, this is my one technological snafu.
Yeah, but I have to look. I have one every fucking week. Right?
That's the suggestion I'm making here, is that perhaps the person who has a technological snafu every week should not be casting aspersions on the one technological snafu I have had.
You've got to give me this one thing. I've got to be able to have one thing.
You have it. Yes, I have absolutely fucking fucked that up, and I have not even tried to fix it.
No, and we shouldn't fix it now. It should just become part of law, right?
It's a thing.
It just has to sit there now. Like, if you want to talk to us on Blue Sky, unfortunately, you have to talk to us. But you can do. You can find us there.
We're also really bad at like vanity searching ourselves. So like, if you really want to talk shit about us and you want us to see it, you have to tag us, because otherwise we're just not going to look at it.
Or somebody else might send it to me, which is often what happens. But and then I'll just laugh at you. So that's great. Anyway,
we do laugh at you.
We do laugh at you. Yeah, and the funnier that you make it, the more we laugh. So please make it funny. If you're gonna say shit, like, please make it funny. That makes my day.
Make it funny.
It makes our day. It really does. Anyway. And that's it. So join us again in a couple of weeks for this show. And until then, I have been Trish.
And I have been Sarah.
And this has been the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast, episode 66. Thank you all for listening.
Trish, I really wanted to say I am Sarah Jacob Friedman.